like to now call to order the Culpeper County Planning Commission meeting for January the 11th. We welcome everyone here this evening. Our first order of, and Happy New Year's to everyone. We're getting started off, first meeting of the year. So we're going to first have the approval of the agenda. We received those in our packets. Any additions or deletions? If not, the chair entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from September the 22nd, October the 12th, October the 19th. We're going to do all those together. So if we didn't see any changes that need to be made, chair entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So the minutes will be put into record. Now we would turn it over to Sam, Mr. McLaren, so for our election of our officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep. First part of the season here, starting a new year, we'll need to elect a new chairman for the Planning Commission. So I'll take nominations now before we open for nominations.
I nominate Sanford Reeves.
Second.
I move to close nominations.
Nominations been open, closed, open, second, and closed. I'm going to have you all raise your right hand. All those in favor of Mr. Reeves continuing as chairman for the Planning Commission for 2023, raise your right hand. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your service to Culpeper County for many, many years, especially serving on the Planning Commission as chair and leader for the Planning Commission. I appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, and we do appreciate the staff, and that makes us who we are. And I do want to thank all of you for your vote of confidence to continue as your chairperson for another year. I don't take that lightly. I consider it a privilege and an honor, of course, and I was never more than pleased of what we accomplished in 2022. What a powerful year, a busy year, but we are glad that it didn't end the way it started, because we had 2 months where we just had a little break in action, but many meetings with the comprehensive plan and addressing every applicant to the fullest, and no matter what the situation might have been when it came to an end, we might not agree, but at the end the majority ruled, and we went on and went out the door and we were still friends. So, but that's the professionalism that this group has shown, and I'm proud to be your chairman. So thank you very much. I think the next item on the agenda is the vice chair. The chair entertain a motion or nominations for the vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Ray Ziegler.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Move to
Any other
close nominations.
Nominations closed. All in favor, raise your right hand. And all opposed. They stayed home. So, all right. Mr. Ziegler, congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'd just like to thank my fellow commissioners for the honor and opportunity to serve as the vice chairman, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody again and the staff to carry out the real important business of the Planning Commission in 2023. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, before we get into the new business, and we want to make sure that you all are included also in this process here, but we'd like for you to understand, and for us to do our jobs properly is for everyone to understand what our job is. And as the commissioners, our position is to work and to give advice to the Board of Supervisors. We are not the Board of Supervisors. We actually look at zoning and the guidelines we have in place and give the public an opportunity to respond so we can get as much information as we possibly can, and then we forward that on to the Board of Supervisors. We're not here to make those final decisions or to actually put our personal feelings into it, although sometimes it's hard to do. But again, the professional commissioners that we have here, we've been able to do that, and I know we'll continue be able to continue to do just that. And And we thank you all for understanding that and working with us and following all the rules and all those things, because I don't know about you, I came in here one night and something was going on in Loudoun County, and I think they fired everybody up there that was dealing with a planning commission or something like that. And but we are pleased that we're able to work together and to meet the needs of the Board of Supervisors by coming to you and listening to the applications and seeing that they're fit and how they should go on further. So just want to let you know that most of us up here probably like to be a Board of Supervisor. Okay, and maybe one day we'll be a Board of Supervisor. But today our position is a planning commissioner, and of course we're here because we're glad to do that. So now, gave you all of that. Not time for dinner. It's time to go ahead and move on into our new business. So the first item of new business, we're going to turn it over to Neil, if you would.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Planning Commission will consider a revision to Appendix A, the zoning ordinance of the county code. The proposed revision is to Article 5, Residential District, R1, Section 5, 2-3, accessory uses and structures, and is intended to allow the keeping of chickens with restrictions as an accessory use in the R1 residential zoning district. The Planning Commission will determine whether the proposed ordinance amendment is necessary to further the general purpose of promoting health, safety, or general welfare of the public and other purposes as found in the Code of Virginia, Section 15.2-2283 and 2285.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we don't have any maps for this, no fancy presentation either. We're hoping that this will be a relatively simple review of an existing zoning ordinance, which is your residential zoning district. The Rules Committee of the board recently looked at allowing or making allowance for the keeping of chickens in the residential zoning district. Today, that's not allowed. It's considered an accessory or an agricultural use, no matter whether you have one chicken or 1,000 chickens. It's considered an agricultural use currently, which in today's zoning ordinance would be either the A1 or the RA zoning in the county of Culpeper. Many other jurisdictions, as you all know, do have residential allowances for the keeping of chickens or backyard chickens. There's many terms that are used now. The Board of Supervisors, through the Rules Committee, looked at it. They looked at the specific language that you're looking at tonight as well, which would be basically amending the R1 zoning district in the accessory use section and including a new reference or a new allowance for the keeping of chickens on an occupied single-family residential lot. And then there's several provisions or restrictions that are stated there. One, that no person shall keep any rooster. The chickens shall be used for a non-commercial household. Egg production, any commercial slaughtering of chickens or selling of eggs on the site shall be prohibited. And then you have a separate provision there about the area of confinement for non-commercial raising of chickens shall be located no closer than 50 feet to the property line. And then a last provision there, the number of chickens being kept at any time shall not exceed 6 individual birds. Just as a background, you can potentially petition the Planning Commission, the board, to have chickens in the residential zoning district, but it requires a conditional use permit. It's a $2,000 minimum application fee plus advertising and a mailing cost. And that's one reason why we're looking at this ordinance tonight. We've had a few people over the years, not for chickens, but for the keeping of horses on their property, go through that process successfully. Some not, depending on where the property is located. Mr. Chairman, we did create a memo just to kind of create some questions that came along or up at the Rules Committee. We did also provide on board docs some example ordinances that already exist today from some area counties in Virginia, Warren, Shenandoah, Hanover, and then the city of Fredericksburg specifically. Staff does encourage the Planning Commission, when you're considering this ordinance, to consider future enforcement of the regulation. Our office would be charged with any enforcement of this, no matter how you draft it or how the Board of Supervisors ends up adopting it or not adopting it. Just as a little way of background, we do get inquiries, I'd say infrequent at best, for the keeping of chickens in the residential zoning district. And that's mainly because 80% of our county is either A1 or RA. So we have a limited amount of R1 in the county today. But we do have parcels that are big enough, in staff's opinion, that could accommodate the keeping of chickens that are zoned R1. Some things to think about: the area of confinement. Does the code need to be more specific or less specific about that? Is the 50-foot setback necessary? Could it be less? Is the limitation of 6 the right number? And that's going to be arguable no matter how direction you go on that. What about other types of fowl or poultry, or do you want to just limit it to the chickens? And then, of course, you always have the rooster discussion. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'm going to leave it up to you. This is an advertised public hearing. Staff's not making a firm recommendation one way or another. This was brought to the board separately through the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee is forwarding this to you for your review and recommendation. So, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. I'm going to do something just a little bit different than what we usually do, and I'm going to ask commissioners at this time, do you have any questions for the staff before we open the public hearing? Any questions? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple. Sam, so under the current ordinance, are chickens expressly prohibited from R1?
They are because they're considered an agricultural use, and agricultural use is not a permitted or an accessory use currently.
Okay, so if somebody's got chickens in say, a fenced-in backyard, just the fact that they're there is wrong, and if someone informs county authorities that there are chickens there, then the county authorities have to take some action.
That's correct.
Who deals with the complaints now, and how are they dealt with?
They're complaint-driven. They would come into our office primarily, and Mr. Drumhiller, to my right, would lead that investigation.
And if the change is made, would the enforcement mechanism be any different? I mean, would it still be
there
Neil's
would
job?
still be, and Commissioner Price, to your fellow commissioners, there's definitely going to be a level of enforcement no matter how you do this. We understand that, but keeping it as simple as possible to help with that is ideal if we can. So.
And you say you only get, what, 1 or 2 complaints a year?
We do, and Neil can share it more if I'm incorrect on this, but I don't believe we get any more than a couple of concerns or questions, inquiries to have it either in any given calendar year.
Okay.
So,
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Question, Sam. What's the town's policy on that?
so we reached out to the town. There's no prohibition, but they also don't have an ordinance right now either. So,
I can speak to that, actually, because we dealt with that when I was on the town council. There is no town ordinance on chickens. We used to get periodic complaints about it, but there was no ordinance, and so members of the council or members of the police department would go over and try to tell the people who had the chickens, please keep the chickens in your yard, and it was dealt with very informally like that, but there's nothing at all on the town ordinances that addresses chickens.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Dorman.
Well, no, are you going to say anything? Okay, so I'm not necessarily having a question here, I'm just trying to understand that we're going to use county resources to count chickens and make sure that we don't have a rooster? Is that true? Yes, that's how this is going to go, because the zoning office has to deal with it. And we're not going to hire a staff person to do this, we're going to put this on top of the existing staff.
yeah, and to answer your question, I can't imagine that it would be that many complaints that would come in based on the number of chickens that someone's going to have.
Well, free-range chickens can run anywhere, they run in town now.
Right.
All right, so there's several places, and if someone hits a chicken, whose fault is it? Whose homeowner's insurance policy? And it becomes an investigation as to who's going to repay for the chicken. Or the predator factor. The predator comes in from wherever at the edge of town, and now your neighborhood has a predator around with your kids, your cats, your dogs, etc. My garage door is open, and the chickens are in my garage, and I'm your neighbor. I mean, it's mind-boggling that we're even addressing the details of chickens when we have covenants in most of the subdivisions in the county have a covenant that prohibit it if you're in R1. If you're not in R1, fine, but R1 has a special designation as a subdivision. On a subdivision environment is a lot different than an agricultural one. And the policing of it is, enforcement of it involves many county departments, from the sheriff to the animal control people and to the zoning office, and we're gonna use our resources for that. I can't support that, but go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner Thornhill specifically, if the planning commission is interested in this ordinance, if you are, you know, you certainly could pass a recommendation to the board without any number restriction, you know, just for consideration.
You mean how many dozens of eggs they can produce by this number of chickens or
You would-
something?
You could just say that it's an allowance and you not have any restriction at all.
All right, thank you.
That's not what you were saying, though, right?
I didn't say anything
Yeah.
about that, I just think that it's
The number of them, you didn't.
the,
you didn't
the
express-
county, the county resources to police such an allowance in a zoning situation seems frivolous, when there's many other things we could do with our county resources besides count chickens, or how they're being handled or managed. Thank you.
Anyone else? See, Mr. Drumheller is agreeing with you on that part. I think, and before we opened the public hearing, I looked at this and really thought about it too. And when the fad came and everybody was buying these little chicken coops, the little small ones and nice ones that were being made, that you could get maybe about 3 or 4 chickens in it and a rooster somewhere. But, you know, that was great, but then how do you control it? And since then, what I have seen in 2 locations that I'm very familiar with, where a house had been sold and the neighbor moved in, and then the neighbor moves in, and then all of a sudden, the other neighbor owns chickens also. Because I've never seen anyone keep chickens in. I don't know how, you know, they're gonna actually keep the chickens in, because a lot of times they let them go out. But it's gonna be a real challenge to be able to do that. And I thought my father had bought some chickens and went to his house, and he's got chickens everywhere. Okay, and, so it's something about this situation is truly a nuisance to me. I don't want the rooster waking me up. You know, I want to get up when I want to get up, right? But you hear these things, and they grow, and they continually get worse. And I think, as Ms. Thornhill said, we putting resources trying to accommodate that. Now, you all said, you know, maybe 6. In your memo, it said possibly 6 chickens, and you know, I mean, to me, if we set a small number, then, you know, I mean, you're not telling the people, or telling the citizen that they can't, you know, can't have that opportunity to do that. So, I like a small number without telling them they can't. But the thing is, they grow, because there's one place that I know already that it was 1 chicken house, and it's 3 chicken houses. And I mean, these are houses that people could live in. 3 chicken houses, and it's just chickens everywhere. But, you know, I went into Wise today, and the eggs were $5 for 12 of them. So, you know, you understand what's kind of happening there. And if we don't put some kind of control in place, it's just going to be something that is going to get out of control.
In
So-
R1, yeah, because
Yeah,
we're
in
talking
R1.
about
Yeah,
R1.
Yeah, R1,
Right.
in R1 specifically, yes. So, now, we've said all we have to say, right, at this particular point, and we're going to open this up.
I thought we were just asking questions.
That's all, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, because now we're going to open the public hearing, okay? At this time, we now open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to come up and speak, raise your hand, be recognized by the chair, and we will have you come up, and we have 3 minutes that we will give you all to, you know, get your point across, hopefully, and we'll take it from there. Anyone like to speak to this application? Raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Don Heat, Stevensburg.
Happy New Year and good evening.
Happy New Year, sir.
I have a couple suggestions. First, I would change the term chicken to fowl. That way you would include turkeys, because when the alarms sound for the fire alarms, the turkeys will do what they do. They will gobble. I would also address free range. I would require that they be housed in a chicken type housing of some sort. I would also suggest a limit on hens, 6 hens and no roosters, for obvious reasons. But the most important question I have tonight is that will we be calling Neil the Chicken Czar or Mr. Chicken? How do we address Neil? Very, very important question.
We'll give him that option.
The reason why I live in Culpeper, for the simple reason, 1 minute we can be debating about chickens and chicken eggs, and the next minute we can be discussing industrial solar and toxic waste dumps. And I appreciate your flexibility and the willingness to talk about many different subjects. But yes, the chicken issue should be addressed, but it should be addressed with some sort of reason. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Corey Clinton in the Stevensburg district. Just sitting here and listening to this, I really don't have a dog in the show here, but
No, we talking chickens.
right, chicken in the show. Thank you for correcting me on that. But as you're opening and working, as a two-way relationship with the community and stuff, and open for suggestions, I understand the ordinances around different, like agricultural or residential and stuff, but I think one way to keep the ordinance as written, but a modification would be, there's an exception. Most people, what we're talking about here is people live close to each other and chickens will go into their garage and stuff like that. But is there an exception to where they're in residential 1 to where they may be on a plot large enough? So maybe there should be modify and work and make a mechanism other than $2,000. That doesn't seem within, with the scope of this, it seems like excessive. But a mechanism to apply for an exception and maybe reduce the application fee. But, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else?
When you and I grew up, we had them all over the place.
Give your
Larry
name
Green,
okay.
Salem District. I gotta laugh at this. But anyway, let me give you a simple resolution for this. I understand the people in the city and town don't want chickens. Heck, you and I grew up, we used to have a rooster every other block, but 90% of your chickens are not going to survive free range anymore. But hawks, foxes, cats, and everything else. So the limit of 6 per house or whatever, you know what I do in the springtime, you can't regulate how many chickens you're going to have in that pen. But 90% of the people now have these big chicken houses. They're not going to survive out of that. So maybe put in there where they got to have a 25 by 25 pen enclosed, and that's where they stay. And I don't know what difference it's going to make if it's 50 feet, 25 feet, 2 feet from it, as long as it's not interfering with your neighbor. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, last opportunity to talk chicken. Okay. Declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners, any other, Mr. Price?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Neil, about how many hours a month do you spend regulating poultry?
I wouldn't say one, but, I have enforced this definition of an agricultural animal in the R1 district, probably at a frequency of once every 2 years. I've had to make people get rid of chickens in the R1.
Okay. And then one final thing. In item B here in the draft language, it says, the second sentence, any commercial slaughtering of chickens or selling of eggs on site shall be prohibited. Does that imply that slaughtering of chickens for home consumption would be permitted? So actually, it's that any slaughtering of chickens or selling of eggs on site should be prohibited. If we go forward with this, I would suggest the words commercial be stricken out, so it just says any slaughtering of chickens or selling of eggs. Just to make that clear, because it seems to imply you can kill them if you're going to eat them at home.
Okay. Yes.
I guess, I kind of see this as defeating the purpose of zoning. It seems to me we're going to go from R1 instead of A1, we're going to go to little a1, just a little agriculture. You know, we're talking about chickens today. If somebody wants hogs, 2 hogs tomorrow, cattle the day after that, I just think it's defeating the purpose of zoning. I think it's going to be a huge burden on the staff, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not going to be that many, but in that same event, how many people are wanting this? Are we talking about 10 people, or are we talking about 1,000? You know, it seems to me like we're going to impact a lot of people for, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's a really popular thing that we're looking at here. And again, my biggest thing is that I think it defeats the purpose of zoning. The gentleman said, you know, hey, if $2,000 is too much, maybe it's a more rational thing to say to change the fee, to request it. My perspective.
And I think, Mrs. Igley, and where we are headed and looking at these is to be a little proactive, because I know I'm seeing a whole lot more of it than I used to see, and it's okay to have it, but then it just continued to grow into something else, and I think that's where we want to make sure that we have our ordinance, the zoning in place as tight as we can get it in case that one that Neil has to go out and to address.
That's assuming that we're going to pass it. I'm saying, I don't even think it's viable in R1 zoning to allow it. If they would like to come before a special exemption meeting, as we have with the horse people, because in R1 you cannot have a horse. So I don't want to have a 4-H kid stand up there and cry because we're not allowing in R1 their chicken, their hog, their horse, their sheep, their rabbits. So I just feel as though it is not a viable entity, and a dozen eggs at $5, you're going to spend more than that per chicken per month to feed it. So I feel as though it is a hobby that someone has asked the supervisors if they could. They're not here tonight, obviously. So why are we going to pursue it in like it's viable? I don't think that it's a viable thing to do.
And what's not viable to do?
Chickens in R1, and again, then you have covenants in some of these subdivisions. So first they're going to say, I got a special exemption. Now you're going to go to your homeowner association and try to override, and you can't. Your covenants are going to be the Bible for if you can or cannot have any kind of livestock. That's my thoughts. I'm not going to support anything.
Yeah.
If you want to reduce the fee, maybe I could do that. I think that would be okay if they want to ask for an exemption.
So not doing anything is, we just keep it to where you can't have any fowl in there
Well,
at
the
all.
existing ordinance says you can't.
You can't have any
Right.
in there, and we have plenty out there. We have plenty out there.
Right, because it'll be
Right.
ducks
So
too.
what do we do? So what do you do then? By not having anything, by not doing anything? So what are we saying? That what's there, and you can continue to grow it? It just seems like we should just have something in place so that the neighbors, a lot of neighbors are probably not here, I mean, Neil doesn't go to as many complaints because people don't want to call. You know, I don't really
Well,
wanna
'cause the
talk. But
covenants-
they're inconvenience, not the subdivisions. I'm speaking of, you know, just, these places where we do have an acre and a half, and half of their lot is filled with chickens, you know, chicken coops, not just one. It's a difference than raising them as pets or raising them, you know, for 4-H or something like that. And, but when you just, something to me should be in place.
And it seems, sir, can I
Yes,
speak?
go ahead.
It seems to me like, right now, we have an ordinance that says it's not allowed. And
No.
people ignore it.
Nah, yeah.
If we change the ordinance and make it more liberal, they're gonna ignore that too. I don't see why they, you know, people are just gonna do what they wanna do unless it's enforced. And I know it's difficult for you to do, and that's why I said, I don't have a good feel for how many there are here. But again, I just feel that this is the purpose, this is why we have zoning. And, you know, we have people who have, you know, community gardens and so forth. There may not be able to have a garden at their house, we go to a community garden. Or maybe you can have a community chicken farm, I don't know. But it seems to me that we shouldn't be inflicting this on the people in an R1 zone who bought there thinking that these were the rules when they moved in.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Go ahead.
So I just want to say, I personally am fine with people keeping chickens. You know, I'm not opposed to looking at a reduced fee either. And I think personally, the reduced fee is probably a better thing because the lot size can vary so greatly. Because if I tell you you're going to have a 50-foot setback, you know, and you have an acre and a half, and if I tell you you got a 50-foot setback and you got half or a quarter of an acre, like that's a completely different scenario. So, and I think that does take a lot of burden off the county as well with enforcement. If we just do a reduced fee for them to apply, because, you know, then when they come forward with that application, we can set those parameters. You know, you got a quarter an acre and you want to have 50 birds, not going to happen. And I think that still keeps it loose enough, you know, fee-wise, like $25, that way the 4-H kid can have their couple of chickens or whatever. I think that's probably the easiest, simple solution to keep the burden off the county and still allow people to have the right to have poultry.
You know, we might be taking the burden off the county, but we putting the burden on the neighbors who has to live and watch this type of situation happen around them. And
Yeah, but that can be said anywhere.
yeah, but that's what I think is, and I think that's the whole reason that this is before us today is because of the fact that, like Mr. Ziegler said, that people are ignoring it. You know, they are ignoring it, and personally, that's a situation I've seen happen to where, you know, you come in and you got 1 acre of land and you got 50 chickens. No, someone has to say something. Some guidelines need to be in place, you know, for those. And if you told not that you can't have them, and you do, that means Neil has to go out to them only if somebody reports it, right?
That's the way our system is today. That doesn't mean it'll always be that way, but we are complaint-driven right now, so.
Yeah.
Right, but the same type of situation, somebody could have 20 dogs or 20 cats or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still the same principle. Like, when you buy land, you have that chunk of land and that's it. You can't control necessarily what the neighbors do, whether you like it or not, and it just is what it is. That's my personal opinion on it. You know, somebody with 10 dogs, 5 dogs, whatever, breeding dogs can have just as much of a mess and noise as somebody that's got some chickens. So I feel like if you're gonna try and do that with chickens, then what's, you know, then are we gonna talk about dogs, then are we gonna get cats, like, where does it stop?
All righty.
Mr.
Anyone
Chairman-
else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
and I was going to bring this up. So apparently, we've got a complaint-based enforcement situation with this, and that's not really uncommon with ordinances. I mean, you wait for somebody not to like the situation, and then they'll leap into action. And And since the number of complaints are very low, it seems like maybe we are solving a problem that doesn't quite exist. Let me ask, if we reduce the fees on keeping chickens, can it be fees that just address chickens, or do the fees in place address a whole category of, say, farm animals that might be in somebody's backyard? I mean, could we reduce fees just for keeping chickens in R1?
Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner Price, I'd say that, you can make that recommendation to the board. Of course, the board sets the permit fees and the application fees. And, you could recommend that there's a tier of use permit fees. Right now, we don't have that. So that $2,000 fee is for utility scale solar or the keeping of chickens. So it's a flat fee plus advertising. I will share that process is not unburdensome, just so you know. So it takes a few months. It still takes staff time. Still have to contact the paper. The neighbors are going to be contacted, as Mr. Chairman brought up. So it's not a easy process, but I think that will weed out the people that are genuine versus not genuine, if that's what you're after. The process has always done that. It'll probably continue to do that. If you wanted to say we don't recommend an ordinance, but we recommend a fee structure that's different than what you have today and is possibly lower, I think that's a fair recommendation to the board, and I don't disagree with that. So.
Okay, all right, thanks, Sam.
Okay. So if we leave the way it is, then none is supposed to be there, no foul at all.
Except by use permit.
Right, if you
Yeah.
get use permit.
Okay, okay. So, all right, so what we'll do is, and what will end up happening, if someone calls you, then they need to actually call the law enforcement or something to make it, right? So we take the burden off of one and we put it on other, because that's what we're going to see. We are seeing a lot of this now, and if you're in an R1 and, you're in an R1, area, and I can understand when kids and, I was in 4-H, and I had rabbits and all, so, but I knew I could only have 6 run, no, I'm just kidding, not 6, but, but still, I knew we couldn't have but so many. And I think that's the key. No one's saying not have them, but the thing is that this is getting, in some situations, and it's getting really bad, and that's the thing that I would have to tell the citizens too, is just call it in, and then you just make bad neighbors, but that's just the way it looks when we do nothing there. So, but anyway, that's not my decision, final decision to make. So, but that's what we have out there now. So, at this time, we don't have to do anything, or
Mr. Chairman, that's up to you. If you don't want to make a recommendation on the proposed ordinance, you certainly can make a recommendation to do something different, if that's up to you.
And the proposed ordinance is, includes these 1, 2, 3, 4 items that you all had in the memo.
That's what staff had proposed based on some other ordinances that we had based it off of, basically.
So right now, there's no setback or anything. Where your property line is, you bring them
No,
right
there'd
up
be
to the
a
property line?
area confinement would be 50 feet off the property line.
Okay.
So at one point, we had someone with 5 acres and horses, and we were asking them to post a bond for the manure hauling away. What do we say about that, if that's not in there? Okay. All right.
There
And
are
we
ordinances that are
we
very
deal with
restrictive.
horses too, and that's what we learned a lot about the horses, how many horses you could have on per acre, which was something that we had to, learn through that process, and we put some restrictions on that, right? But they had a certain amount of land, but I guess with the chickens, it could come down to something like that one day, to where, depending on the amount of land you have this much land for, for so many chickens or ducks or turkeys or whatever you might have. So, but anyway,
Ready for motion?
if there's no other discussion, okay, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we recommend to the staff to look at the application fees and see what is cost-effective, so that you could reduce for special exception or special use permit. But I do say that we would leave the existing ordinance in place as it is so that you cannot automatically have in R1 chickens, just like it is.
Second that.
Any other discussion? Good.
Yeah, I just had one question for Sam. Could something like this go through the BZA instead? I've seen other applications. I know, like, I can speak to the city of Manassas. It came up in 2021. We denied it. And basically, they wanted to do it on, 10 to 20,000 square foot lots. You
Right.
got denied because of enforcement, or lack of enforcement.
Right, right now, the way our ordinance is constructed, the only way that it would go to the BZA is if someone filed an appeal to a violation notice that, determined that was a violation that exists. Because a special exception or a special use permit, some BZAs do handle those as well, but in Culpeper, the Planning Commission, the board reviews the special exception permits. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking if the process was different, it would be a cheaper way for the applicant to then prepare whatever they're going to submit.
It would be, but only under an appeal circumstance at that point. So it'd be a whole different
Because
circumstance.
technically, if they already have chickens on there, then they're a non-conforming use
Right.
already.
And that would be an appeal of a determination that we're not determining that our definition is correct, or that we're actually looking at a chicken, or whatever the appeal can be. I mean, it can run the gamut, but that would be an appeal situation currently. So.
And to actually reduce the fee is still trying to get the ones who are honest to come in and do it. So it doesn't matter if it's 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever, it's up to the resident. That person has to come in and say, I want to give you $1,200 so I can get this permit to do what everybody else is doing anyway.
Correct.
Breaking the rule. So somewhere along the line, I know right now we're not, but somewhere along the line that I can see that being needing to be addressed. If I buy a house today and it's in R1 and I don't expect to have a lot of, anything next door to me, but, people move in and they say, well, don't have to worry about it, but anyway, we have a second, and we have a motion and a second, and if there's no other discussion, ready for the vote? Ready for the question? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? All right. Okay. We will leave it. We don't have to, we don't send that to the board. That's where it's saying. Okay.
Doesn't mean you won't see it again, but we'll move it on up.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Next, in new business, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have case U 2235-22-1. It's a request by Strata Clean Energy Maroon Solar LLC, the applicant, for a conditional use permit to operate a utility-scale solar facility in accordance with Article 17 and Article 3-2-2.18 of the zoning ordinance. The property is located along and between Route 617 Raccoon Ford and Route 658 Mount Pony Road in the Stevensburg Magisterial District. The applicant seeks to construct and operate a 149-megawatt project on approximately 1,879 acres, occupying with panels approximately 671 acres, and is found on tax map parcel numbers, tax map 63, parcel number 14, 14A, 14B, tax map 64, parcel 2, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 38, 40, 41, 46, 47, 48, 50, 54, 55A, 55B, and 74. Planning Commission will consider, review, and make findings whether the general location or approximate location, character, and extent of the proposed utility-scale solar facility are substantially in accord with the county's adoptive comprehensive plan or part thereof in accordance with Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, Section 15.2, 2232A. The Planning Commission will also be responsible for making a general recommendation to the Board of Supervisors as to approval or disapproval of the use permit.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, on the screen, in red there highlights the parcels that Neil read off for this proposed conditional use permit. It is for a utility scale solar facility, as Article 5 allows under the A1 zoning ordinance for this type of facility currently, through the Article 17, which is your special use permit or conditional use permit chapter, as well under those general standards. And then as Neil also read, you'll need to make two findings tonight. One will be a substantial accord finding with the comprehensive plan, which our most current version is still 2015. And then also an Article 17 finding specifically for the conditional use permit application. And I'll try to remind you all along the way that we'll need to make those two findings, either tonight or when you're ready to make those findings, but they do need to be specific, and they need to be different. On the screen also there, you see the blue line, and that's part of the reason why you're seeing this request, and you've seen some others. We do have a major transmission line that runs through the southeastern part of the county, known as the Remington-Gordonsville transmission line that was recently upgraded not too many years ago. This project should look familiar to all of you. Strata has named this project Maroon Solar. Maroon Solar has been before the Planning Commission, I believe, twice before. Most recently, Maroon did make it to the Board of Supervisors. Maroon Solar didn't make it to the Board of Supervisors, and it was ultimately denied by that particular board over, I believe, about a year and a half ago. They since have retooled their application. There are a couple additional parcels that are included in the application. They've submitted additional material with their application. They've paid attention to the board's discussions along the way as far as the ordinance review, the comprehensive plan as well. And there's an additional number of attachments that were part of their application that were not around in 2020. So those have been updated. Hopefully the Planning Commission has gotten a chance to review some of those documents as well. We did also post on board docs a review from the agencies, our typical agencies such as VDOT, the Soil and Water Conservation District. We also had a review posted by SDI, which is a hired consultant by the county, as part of their application review process. And you see a number of comments posted as well from SDI, which is a consultant on behalf of the county. They pointed out some suggestions, concerns, and otherwise in that document. And hopefully the Planning Commission had a chance to review that as well. As I mentioned previously, the application was slightly different in the fact that there are a couple additional parcels included, but that doesn't mean the project necessarily grew. The parcels did grow in number, and the acreage, therefore, in total did grow, but the actual panel or planned proposed area of disturbance for the project actually has shrunk some. So what you saw, as Neil read in the description, about 671 acres is what the applicant is proposing for panel area for this project. One other change, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, as far as entrances go, I'm going to pull up. It's going to be hard to make out on this screen, but this is posted on board docs as well. The applicant does show primarily two entrances for the project, which is not many for a project that encompasses 1,800 acres. One project entrance would be, the primary construction entrance would be on 617, which is known as Raccoon Ford Road. Previously, there were multiple entrances, or at least two entrances on Raccoon Ford. That is not the case in today's proposal. And then you'd have a entrance that would be after, or an operation type entrance after the facility would be built on Route 658, which is Mount Pony Road. VDOT did weigh in. As I mentioned, as an agency, they did pass some recommendations or some comments along the way. And I'm not going to go over those, but one thing they did talk about was the maintenance of the road. That's been a big concern for VDOT. And that's primarily in response to the large number of construction vehicles that would encounter primarily 617 as part of this project if it were to be approved. The applicant did submit a construction mitigation plan or traffic plan as part of their submission too, which VDOT has reviewed and made comments as well. The Soil Water Conservation District did weigh in and has weighed in consistently on this project. They had recommendations earlier in the application, or prior applications, I should say, about limiting the potential disturbance area, making sure that final stabilization with permanent vegetation is achieved prior to moving on to the next phase. They did have more specific comments this time regarding runoff. and made a comment about panel arrangements should be placed on cross slopes, and use level spreaders to be considered so that there's not a drip line that's eroding, and the applicant has addressed that to some degree. Just wanted to remind the Planning Commission that ultimately, if the project were to be approved through the use permit, they would be subject to a site plan that would be reviewed by the Department of Environmental Quality for stormwater on behalf of the county. Just a little bit of background of where we are. The Planning Commission, as you all know, made a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for a new utility scale solar ordinance, or an addition to Chapter Article 17. That ordinance, you recommended in October of 2021. The board has not adopted a new ordinance as of today. So you're looking at Article 17 as your primary guiding, but you're also looking at the 2019 still utility scale solar development policy. And that policy has not changed since October of 2019, so the last time you reviewed that project, the same policy applies to this project tonight as of today. And I bring that up because there's a couple of things in that policy that you'll remember that this project is not necessarily congruent with. One is the size. If you remember, the policy does talk about a 300-acre area. Even though the panel area now is proposed to be less than it was, you're still looking at, double the size of that 300-acre requirement at 671 acres. And then, of course, the project area in total would be about 1,800 acres. So you have that concern there, still with the 2019 policy in this current application. Staff has had concerns, and we've noted those consistently through the applications. And again, with this particular application, concerns with erosion and sediment control and stormwater management is a key component. And that has not changed in the state of Virginia, has not changed with this large project either as far as staff being concerned. The applicant has done some more analysis. They have done some geotechnical work that was part of their project analysis. They've done a preliminary floodplain analysis that is also included in your package for review this time around. And they have provided a preliminary stormwater plan that does show primarily using the outskirts of the property, if you will, for potential BMPs if the project were to be developed. But they do stay outside of floodplain areas that are designated by FEMA as 100-year or 1% annual chance floodplain areas. They do stay out of known and designated wetland areas and have established potential wildlife corridor areas throughout the project. So they have made some concessions there with the environmental features of this property. Another concern that staff has had and is pointed out again in the staff report this time around are the construction impacts. A project of this size in a rural locality, you will notice it when it's being built. You're going to have a large amount of construction traffic. You potentially would have a large amount of noise depending on the type of construction, especially if any blasting would be employed. And the applicant's not committing that they need to do that. There's just a possibility that it could be done. But pile driving, if pile driving methods are used, or drilling, if drilling methods are used to install the pilings and therefore the racking systems for the panels. One thing, Mr. Chairman, that I mentioned is you have two different things at play here. Primarily, you have your Article 17 standards, and those have not changed. The comprehensive plan, we're also going through a review. You all did a great job last year and the year before that as well, as looking at the comprehensive plan. You've made your recommendation. The board is working through their drafts of the comprehensive plan today, but we're still working under the 2015 plan today. There's not a lot in the comprehensive plan as far as specific to this use, but there are a lot of things that you need to consider, as always, when you're looking at a use permit for the comprehensive plan. And staff has pointed out some of those things, and I would largely use that 2019 policy to kind of guide you through there. But in the staff report, we detailed some things that you should consider potentially as far as the environment chapter in 2015, the economics chapter, the land use chapter certainly, and just as a way of reference, the current land use plan or future land use plan for this area does show it as agricultural or conservation area. So that could be a little bit of a stray from what you're looking at tonight. The applicant also this time around did put together a viewshed analysis. That's something that potentially could be in the adopted ordinance if that were to make it through. Hopefully the Planning Commission's had a chance to look at that. By and large, though, the site, when you're talking about visibility, the applicants have chosen a fairly good property for that. It's fairly flat for the most part. You're not going to see a lot from the roads. There are a few properties that you may be able to see, especially in the wintertime, until some permanent vegetation, perimeter vegetation is to be established. It's been and has been for a number of years timberland. It's forest tract. It has been harvested over the many years, different places. It was recently harvested in the past couple of years as well, or at least a good chunk of the property was. And you can see that on the aerial image here. And that's why you see the different shades of green. And that's where some of the tracts have been harvested and then replanted over the years. The other thing that I wanted to point out, Mr. Chairman, is this map, I believe, kind of details some of the resources that we would want you to consider. You know, when you're thinking about Culpeper and trying to find a good balance for certain things. The property is highlighted in yellow here. You see various shades of color. You see a greenish color. That's a Civil War study area, battlefield study area. You have a blue, which is a core. The transmission line is the red line through the property. You do have a National Historic Register property, or two of them that show up on that map. They're not right adjacent to the property. They're in the vicinity. And then you have some other features like the floodplain that do show up on that property. But by and large, compared to some projects we've looked at, they have been, it's a better location as far as potential historic impacts and some of the other impacts. But the size of the property is still a concern, and just because of the sheer size and volume of the project, it touches on so many different properties because of that alone. I just wanted to bring that up one more time. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try to close up my just synopsis of the staff report here. One thing that has been a concern, I know it's been a concern of the Planning Commission, the applicant has provided a soils report, has updated that to some degree, but long-term management or vegetation management is going to be a concern for a project of this size. The soil conditions today are not the greatest for this location. It may be desirable for some types of vegetation, but it's not going to be typical. You have soils that also don't drain exceptionally well. That should be considered by the Planning Commission. And then because of the timber or the harvesting of that, you need to really take into account whether we can establish adequately ground cover for such a large disturbance area that could happen on this. And that is a concern. The applicant has worked towards that, some solutions that you should certainly consider, but that is still does remain a concern. They've also suggested a number of conditions that largely mimic the example conditions that you find in the policy. They've added some suggestions which I think are good suggestions along the way as well. And staff would have more suggestions if the Planning Commission is inclined to recommend approval of the project. Mr. Chairman, I'll close just with another reminder that the Planning Commission, if you're ready tonight, will need to make two findings, one for your Article 17 standards and one for a substantial accord finding of the comprehensive plan. Preferably, the comprehensive plan finding and under the substantial accord 2232 review would be done first, and then your Article 17. But we will open up one public hearing, as we've done in the past, for both items to be considered, since it is one project. Ultimately, staff is not recommending support of the project at this time, as it does not conform to the most current utility scale solar policy, largely related to size and some other things that are mentioned in the staff report, and therefore does not meet the standards in the staff's opinion with Article 17 or substantial accord with the comprehensive plan.
Sam?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but
Yeah, just one brief thing before we move further. You said that we would have to, it was two articles that when you stated what we would have to do if we were to move this.
yes.
What were those two
So
again?
you want to make a substantial accord finding, which is your 15.2-2232 review in accordance with the comprehensive plan. Is the project and its location or general approximate location of substantial accord with the comprehensive plan or not? And then you'll make a recommendation of whether it complies with the standards of Article 17, which is your conditional use permit ordinance.
Okay. Okay, thank you very
Mr.
much,
Chairman,
sir.
the applicant does have a presentation as well, and we can bring that up on the screen when you're ready for them to do that.
Okay, thanks. At this time, we ask the applicant or someone representing the applicant to come forth.
Have a clicker? Yeah, I do.
And we ask you to speak into that mic so they can hear it back there, too.
Y'all hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
I've taken it off. There we go.
You can push it down in there a little further, and I think it'll stay. There you go. Now, just don't touch it anymore.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yes. Go ahead. Give your name for the record. And
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Vice Chairman. My name is Dan Michaud. I'm a project developer with Strata Clean Energy. Very glad to be here tonight. Strata's been working for almost 5 years on this project. Our landowner partners have stuck with us through it all. So, some of them are here tonight. We're also saddened by the loss of Mr. Morris Peters, who joined the project kind of later, and we're working with his executors to work through this project. But like I said, we're very happy to be here tonight to present this case. Thanks, Sam, for your analysis. Wanted to start off by inviting folks, everyone who's here and anyone who might want to learn more about the project, to join us for an open house next Wednesday from 5 till 8 at the Brandy Station Fire Hall. We'll have experts from engineering and project development and environmental to answer all your questions. We did an open house back in the summertime, and we thought we had pretty good attendance. Now that we're going through the process, we'd like to get more folks out, and we've got a big space. I think they can accommodate about 300 people. So if we can get as many people in there as possible to talk through it over a few hours, that would be fantastic. Tonight's agenda will include a reintroduction of Strata, a look at Maroon's location within the county and how it would fit into the transmission and power generation infrastructure here. We'll go over the updated site plan and talk a bit about how this project, we think, would support the goals of the comp plan. So if I can take a few minutes to just reintroduce Strata. We're a family-owned company, 400 plus employees, 1,000 construction staff. I can assure you that it's not common for a company of this size to still be owned by the original founders in our industry. So we're headquartered in Durham. We've been building and operating utility-scale solar projects since 2011. We've constructed and continue to own and operate hundreds of facilities in North Carolina. Our reputation helped us expand into the Virginia market. So Virginia is a core market for Strata for all aspects of our business. We've constructed 12 utility-scale solar projects. We're currently building another 10, ranging in size from 26 megawatts to 175 megawatts. Some of these were developed by us, but most of them were developed by other firms. So we've seen a lot of different projects, some good, some not so great. We're operating 34 projects under contract with Dominion, and then we're developing another 35. So doing a good job and having high quality project execution is critical for our success, our long-term success. We want to do business for the long term here. We need to do a good job. We need to be in compliance with our permits. We need to be good neighbors. We need to develop great partnerships. So I want to mention that because we're not developing to flip and walk away. This is a core market for us, and we hope to be here for a long time. Here are the projects that we've built. So in the Commonwealth. So as you can see, some smaller, some pretty big, 224 megawatts. We developed 3 of those, and then the ones that we're building now, we developed 4 of those. But we've seen a lot of different stuff out there. We hope that we've learned from other developers' mistakes and can take that into consideration, those mistakes into our own development capabilities. So with me tonight, I've got a wonderful project team that includes my co-development partner, Danielle Walker, our Director of Civil Engineering, Brent Neiman, Kevin Seaford heads up environmental and permitting, Sam Sink is in charge of commercial operations, and Cutter Sidner is a partner with engineering firm Hewitt Solutions. Team's here to answer the commission's and the community's questions about the project. We've done a lot of community outreach to learn how we can improve the project, and so I'll touch on how we've done that in a few slides. Solar projects generate revenue for counties without drawing on services. More revenue for counties helps fund critical services, capital expenditures, or just continuing to keep property taxes low. Solar projects provide meaningful employment and well-paid jobs during construction and operations. One of my personal favorites is that landowners can generate reliable income from their land that they may not be in a position to develop themselves. Finally, solar projects provide an opportunity to generate local, low-cost, reliable power that doesn't generate harmful air emissions or waste during operations. We offered a siting agreement as part of this project in an effort to be a good partner. This is what the revenue generated would look like directly to the county. It's a combination of higher real estate taxes, revenue share at $1,400 per megawatt per year, escalating 10% every 5 years, and upfront payments of $4 million over the first 5 years of operation. So these funds can be used to fund services, capital projects, capital equipment such as fire trucks, or to fund programs such as the Agricultural Lands Preservation Fund. Maroon Solar is it's a high-tech energy infrastructure project. It would tap into the Remington to Gordonsville 230 kV transmission line that runs right through the county. There are several load centers located along this line, 3 in the town of Culpeper. Today, the county gets most of its power from natural gas fired generation from outside the county, plants in Fauquier County, as well as uses peaker fuel oil plants through its membership in the Municipal Electric Association of Virginia. How our power is generated has an impact on our bill. So back in September, Dominion applied for a rate increase from the State Corporation Commission because of the persistently high natural gas prices. That rate increase was approved, and it's expected to add almost $15 a month to the average electric utility bill. In October, Dominion sought approval for 500 megawatts of solar projects. The State Corporation Commission is reviewing those, and if approved, they're expected to add about 38 cents to the average monthly bill. So it's a bit of a capital investment to get solar on the grid, but the price stability makes it worth the investment. So I think we can all agree that none of those benefits really matter if you can't put the solar project in a good place. So it doesn't matter if you build an ugly solar project that affects people's view shed and way of life, or takes away from the rural character of the surrounding community. So let's talk about the updated site layout. So we started with increasing setbacks wherever possible in key locations. So the prior setback from Algonquin Trail Road was 1,500 feet, and while that's pretty far away from the road, it was clear cut and there's somewhat of a slope, so one could conceptually see, imagine that you could see the solar panels. So we added another 2,000 feet, so we're 3,500 foot setback from Algonquin Trail. You can't, there's no way you can see it. It's over half a mile away. Let me back up. The parcel boundary is in light blue, and then actually the solar array fence line is in yellow. So you can see the significant setback from Algonquin Trail Road. We're over 1,300 feet from any residential property, except for one home that's more than 800 feet away, but that's a project landowner and they are supportive of the project. 3,000 feet setback for the substation. We tucked it away as best we could while still being close to the transmission line. All setbacks meet or exceed those being proposed in the latest draft solar ordinance. And it's pretty clear that we've tried to limit road frontage. There's one location where the solar panels are located somewhat close to a road, and that's on the northwestern portion near Raccoon Ford Road. And in that location, we proposed a 200-foot vegetative buffer, which is twice what we have proposed everywhere else. All the mature timber around this site has given us a lot to work with. So we feel pretty good that we can hide this from view. And in locations where timber's been removed, we'll allow the replanted trees. So every time they clear cut, they replant. So we'll look at the site plan here shortly, but all the green areas have been replanted and they will be left to grow, and it's all loblolly pine, so within 5 years it gets pretty tall. This is on the right is the view shed from Algonquin Trail. It's pretty hidden, other than the one area. So if you drive along Algonquin Trail, you can't see it. We're mostly away from that road where the property abuts is clear cut, but all that area will be allowed to grow back. On the left is Raccoon Ford Road. The timber company's done a bunch of clear cutting in there. That's our proposed site, construction site and operational site access. And the image below is a rendering of our proposed planting once the project is operational. So you saw the site plan. We believe this is a very well hidden project with limited road frontage. It's typically when you're siting these projects, you start with transmission lines. Great, where are the transmission lines? I would like to connect to those, and your next step is to find a property that's available for sale or lease, and then your next consideration is what does this look like, and how is the community going to view it? So we've done a lot of work to try and hide the solar panels from anyone's view, from having the solar panels be near the road, putting them in a location that is totally hidden. There's a lot of dense vegetation. It's very difficult to see this project from anywhere. We're not located on prime farmland. It's really only good for timber production. We looked at the historical resource map. There is a lot of rich cultural resource in this area, but we are not encroaching upon those areas at all. We are set back from wetlands and streams. We have reduced the acres under panel by almost 300 acres. We want to accelerate construction duration. The prior application had a drawn-out, phased approach, which sounds great in practice, but I think a lot of the concerns from the community are during the construction period. So we want to get in. We'd like to build it quickly, properly, and safely, and so we have a 18 to 24 month timeline on that, as opposed to 3 or more years I think we had previously. We have prohibited, or we're not proposing, any construction traffic on Mount Pony Road. Previously there was an access point in the northeast of the site. After talking with some of the neighbors who didn't want construction traffic going over there, we removed that, and it would only be an operational access, and so would only see traffic from personal technician vehicles. We have a lot of acreage to work with, so that's one of the benefits here. I know we talk about this being a large conglomeration of land, but what's nice about that is we can preserve a lot of land. So while we may be putting some land under solar panels, there will be almost 600 acres of untouched land. So 301 acres of preserved open space, which are those green areas you see. Most of that's been clear cut, and it will be allowed to grow back. And then other areas within the array or within the property boundary that are not solar panels or stormwater basins will be left alone as well. Culpeper has a very well thought out comp plan. You get the sense that y'all are trying to balance economic development with preserving the rural character of the area. We think that with a good and well thought out set of permit conditions, this project can achieve that for y'all. It's that the standard conditions that we started with are comprehensive. I've not seen a comprehensive set of conditions like that before. We can work with those. It's what we do. And we think that Culpeper's got an opportunity here to set a very high bar for solar project approvals across the Commonwealth, and y'all can be the standard. If a permit is awarded. And with that, I'd just like to make one more plug for the open house. We would love to have everyone from the community come and chat with us and bring us your questions. We'll have plenty of experts on hand to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And at this time, the commissioners, we have any questions for the applicant? We can do that now. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple of things. Thank you very much for the presentation. I noticed that in the packet that we received, there are a set of conditions for approval which were reviewed by the county's consultant, and I assumed that the conditions were your modification of the conditions for approval that are part of the existing solar ordinance. That's correct? That's right, Sam? Yeah, okay. So, but there were a number of significant changes from the proposed or the suggested conditions for approval that you all have proposed. One was, you're looking at an 18-foot height for the solar panels, and our suggested is 12, and we just had a large solar project comparable to this, which is holding 12. So why do you need 18 feet?
Yeah, it provides our engineering team flexibility, so how they orient the panels when they're going through optimization. If the panels are in portrait, they'll be shorter, but if they're in landscape, or maybe it's the other way around, they would be higher. And so you can orient them in different ways. And so however they're oriented, they could be higher or shorter, and that's going to depend on a number of factors. But ultimately, they're tracking the sun, and so they're only at their highest at certain times of day, and then they lay flat at night. So they're not always at that
Okay.
highest point. It provides the engineering team flexibility in design.
All right, I assume that you've seen staff's concerns with your application. So, I mean, if this were to go forward, would you be willing to work with staff to further address those concerns and
Yes, of
at
course.
least meet us halfway, if not more, to get approval?
Yes, of course. Yeah. No, we understand that this is a process, and so the set of conditions will, I think, get us to a place where we all feel that this can move forward.
The land that's been logged, been fairly severely impacted by that, so there's a lot of wood waste laying around. And so you all would clear all that out, put down ground cover and install your panels? So what you've got is basically grassland under the panels instead of pieces of trees and wood chips and things that are there now in the areas that have been logged out?
Yeah, I might call on somebody from our engineering team to provide more color, but effectively, yeah, we would need to clear all of that timber slash.
Okey-doke. And one final thing, we've got another large solar project that's getting ready to start work. Would you be willing to delay your project, that is the point, say that you bring the site plan back, until that project is substantially underway, so that if there are any lessons learned from that project that we can apply to this, that we can make sure that when we move forward with your site plan, we're maybe in a better situation? Because the project that's already been approved, the site plan's already been through, this is the first solar project of that scale that the county has dealt with. And so we have the potential here of having two large-scale solar projects at the same time. And that may not be prudent. So would you be willing to delay until the other one's underway?
So it depends when they start. We've got a schedule that if, say, we received a CUP in April, for example, we would have to do significant detailed engineering. We would have to go through the site plan process as well. So I think it makes sense and that's a significant undertaking as well on staff's part. And so I think they would probably, if the other project has begun in earnest here in the near future, those lessons learned, I think, would certainly make sense to implement during the site plan approval process. I think we're already behind them, depending on when they start.
Yeah.
So I think it would depend, but we're absolutely open to discussing the schedule and timing our project with theirs.
Okay, Martha. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
What soil lab was used?
Soil lab?
Yep.
Do we have that information? I think there was
You're talking about I'm Brent Neiman, Director of Civil Engineering at Strata.
The soil samples, what lab
The
did
soil
you
samples,
use?
I believe we worked with a consultant, it's called Profile Products. So they offer multiple hydraulic mulch solutions, additives for soil. I'm not sure which testing lab they specifically use, but they're the ones that collected the soil samples for us.
Do you know the methodology they used for sampling?
I believe it's a hand auger.
Okay. What is in the biotic soil media that is recommended?
I'm sorry?
What is in the biotic soil media that you guys are recommending?
So the soil improvements, so we would be adjusting pH and organic
No,
content?
you guys talked about adding 3,500 to 2 tons of biotic soil media mix.
Yeah,
So
that-
what
that's-
exactly is that mix?
That's the organics. Generally, those are hydraulically applied product, so it's a recycled wood products typically, similar to what hydraulic mulches are. There's also pH adjustments in there as well to make for adequate, an adequate base for the grass growth.
So you're going to add lime to just
You would have
pH
lime.
and this media as well?
That's right, yes.
Okay,
And-
what
and
is-
those are done, typically those soil tests are done after you've done earthwork activities, so you have what is in situ that you're going to be planting.
What is the seed mix that you guys are going to be using to establish the grass?
So we have, typically we have a warm season and a cool season mix. Warm season's predominantly Bermuda, cool season's predominantly fescue. We also have several other seed mixes in there, including clover, because it prefers some of the shaded areas, so we can get the right grasses in the right places.
Okay.
That's it. Okay. Lance?
I have a few engineering questions. So, one of the questions we had previously was about the existing pavement section of the gravel road. My understanding is you're still going to be using that gravel road, is that correct?
There's a short portion of it, yes.
So did you do a core sample or anything related to that section so that we know that that section has a capacity to support the loads that is going to be coming in and out of that
We
development?
have not yet. What we've proposed as one of the conditions is a construction traffic management plan. So that has to do with traffic routes as well as existing conditions. So those reports are compiled. I believe the condition reads that to a third party acceptable to the county, it's part of the site plan approval process. I'm assuming it would be in conjunction with the county and VDOT. It's a pretty typical assessment on all of our projects. I can certainly assure you those projects, some of those projects on that screen have had poorer access than this site for sure. And so that construction traffic management plan is submitted as part of the site plan process with those details of what the existing conditions are. Subsequently, those are evaluated obviously through the project as its immediate effects are needed. But at the close of the project, it's reevaluated, and that assessment is then resubmitted for verification, and repairs are made accordingly.
Yeah, I think in the original application, there was a section in there about the road repair, and that section got removed from this application when the plan got revised. So I was curious about that.
It's in the conditions. Our proposed conditions has a section specific.
So you're willing to pave the whole section of the road based on what's there, but you don't know necessarily what's there today, is that correct?
Yeah, we had some comments from VDOT, I believe, so certainly there's some work to be done there.
Okay.
Yeah, and we responded that we support whatever VDOT or the county recommends to be done with that. It may be about 400-foot stretch of gravel road.
Okay.
So if paving or other improvements are.
If it's deemed appropriate, then you would do it.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
And I think actually one of the bigger concerns on there is there's some drainage concerns, particularly at maintenance over time. In my visit, I saw a lot of piled of material on the side of the road, which actually holds water and is a detriment to the section. So obviously that's part of those improvements.
Yeah, it was one of my other comments, but I'll keep going. But basically, the geotechnical report that was done, it didn't show a whole lot of borings in it.
Yeah.
Typically, we're looking at having borings where the pond locations are,
There
so
will
that you know
be-
that's accurate.
Yeah, there will be
And
significant.
so right now, you don't know if the pond locations are going to be able to be there in that location.
So-
And you don't know how far you're going to actually have to blast to build the facilities. And having that blasting requirement, I think, is going to be important to understand, what the impact are to the surrounding neighborhoods. That's another item. And then, when you start looking at the actual panels and the construction of the of the piles themselves, you know, if you have rock that you're seeing refusal at, you know, say 3 to 5 feet or whatever, then you're going to have to drill through those piles. So you're going to be pile driving essentially so there's going to be noise associated with that. So I would also want to see how that is going to be addressed in the application. The limits of disturbance for grading, I know in the current ordinance, it's 50 acres. So I'd be curious as to how, I didn't see a phasing plan in there showing how you're actually going to phase the project in terms of making sure you meet those ordinance requirements. The previous application basically came back and said that didn't really feel that that was necessary to address, even though it's in our ordinance. So I was curious how you were planning to address that.
Yeah, I know we've got some work to do on the phasing. 50 acres is, it's going to be a really tough number, right? There's no question about that. I think one of the risks you have with a stipulation, as it currently reads, the longevity of the project to accomplish that, it stretches things out considerably, to the point where we're there for years longer than we otherwise would be. So we're try to balance that concern of being on the site, in the neighborhood, under construction for that length of time, when otherwise it really wouldn't be necessary.
But disturbance is phased in accordance with erosion and sediment control handbook and typical stormwater construction procedures. So there is phasing. It's just that typically figure that out during more detailed engineering and certainly in advance of the final site plan approval.
So are you willing to limit your phases to 50 acres of disturbance during construction?
That would.
Because that's what our ordinance states.
So the proposed ordinance as it stands today, I believe, removed that.
Didn't remove it, it adjusted it. Right, Sam? I think it went to 100 acres, if I remember.
No, your recommendation did, but the current draft is taking that out altogether.
All right. But the current ordinance that we're under is 50 acres.
And there's actually not a current ordinance, it's a policy.
Policy, sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Policy. All right. And then on the pond locations, was there any conceptual design done for those locations? Like, was the VRM spreadsheet done for those to determine what nutrients how you're meeting those requirements?
Yes, sir, we have looked at that. We actually have aerial topography of the site, so all the pond locations are based on actual site conditions in existing low points. So we have done that evaluation. We have run some preliminary VRM. A lot of that depends on what are the DEQ regulations. There's a bit of flux. I don't know if you're aware, there's a guidance memo that's currently out that likely goes into effect in mid-January. So we have done that. I think in general, all of the open space will be preserved as conserved open space to meet nutrient credit requirements. I think our preliminary analysis says we have a handful of the basins that would need to be upgraded, basins and/or ditches, because there's some other things that we can do to meet nutrient requirements. So there are a handful that would be upgraded to receive nutrient credits, but it would all be done on site. I mean, our goal is to meet that threshold or right at it. We're not looking to buy credits in that regard.
Yeah, I think Soil and Water Conservation District wanted some more information related to that as one of their comments also, about conceptual design of those facilities, whether you have the storage evaluations and things like that done.
And sir, you mentioned the stormwater basin locations. They're actually shown in blue, the blue hatched kind of different blobs on there. The legend is blocked by the commentary, but they're located throughout where we would expect them to go, for their most appropriate locations based on our understanding of the site today.
But are they actually that size, or are they, are they truly just a planning exercise where it's just drawn on there, or did you actually do any design associated with it?
We've delineated all the drainage areas for those, and we actually have, we have spreadsheets based on historicals where we build up what those footprints look like with the tie-outs for contours.
Okay.
It becomes an encumbrance to the facility, so I don't do any benefits for us if we
Sure.
don't properly align them. So there has been a considerable amount of work put into those.
And I see that you, since the last application, you added floodplain study evaluation as part of that, a part of this evaluation. The one thing I noted was that your CN values or your actual runoff values didn't include the panels themselves. I know the DEQ requirements, the new requirements state that you have to comply with treating that as impervious area for the panels. I know, at least from what I can tell, is you did not do that. Is that correct?
DEQ has provided an exemption if you have an interconnection agreement. We do, so.
Yeah, I guess in accordance with, because this is a conditional use permit application, in accordance with 17-1.1.2, as part of CUP, we have to look out the health and welfare and safety of the public and adjoining property owners associated with that in addition to what DEQ is asking. So is it really true that, if you're looking at a real situation, just to count the poles, essentially, because the reality is it's going to be more like an impervious surface there. So the floodplain that you did do showed floodplain information associated with the floodplain, but whether or not that's truly accurate or not, because you didn't really show a great increase in runoff. But if you take into account the panels, I think you're going to see a larger increase in runoff along the floodplain. And one of the things is we'd want to make sure that you're not flooding any adjoining property owners, as well as the culverts that the floodplain ends up going to at the off-site location. You would need to validate that is adequate to support the runoff and you're not flooding the roadways associated with it.
Sure. Were that a condition, we would certainly do that.
Okay.
Obviously, through the stormwater requirements for DEQ, we have to meet channel protection and flood protection, very stringent criteria. Not necessarily to the 100-year, obviously. Generally speaking, we've done a lot of analysis that imperviousness difference, it is an addition. It's not as significant as you would otherwise think. It's generally somewhere around, 20-25% of the site becomes impervious when you add that in. And a lot of that depends on the density at which the facility is built.
That's all I have. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Thornhill?
Okay, so there are many little tweaks since the last time you were here. And he was just mentioning the inclusion of the panel as part of impervious surface. And it doesn't sound like you guys did any change other than you thought maybe you got an exemption for that. Is that true?
DEQ would not regulate us or require us to consider those impervious. But if the county were to impose that condition,
Then you would have to. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I understand that all of this has to be financially feasible, and for you to wait for this and that and et cetera to happen, I think that realistically, it won't be financially feasible to do the project here. But I had concerns, and I'm going to be a little more general because I'm not an engineer, but the phased land disturbance or the lack of that, and it is part of our current policy. I am also concerned about that. And if you're worrying about it stretching out the length of the project, then why not put more people on it and giddy up and go? That's kind of how I look at that excuse that, well, it'll take too long. Well, you could still do the phasing, and you're just going to have to put more people on it or equipment. You have 500 parking spaces coming up. Who's all that for? Then I am concerned about the transfer of ownership. And if that does occur, then this permit will not expire. So I would say somewhere in the next 40 years, the ownership will transfer. And all of our, if this, then that, all of our conditions, et cetera, need to transfer. And I believe your documents say that the permit will not expire if it's transferred. So I have some concerns about that. And the biggest thing for me has always been the enforcement mechanisms that as a county, we have to be responsible for if you violate anything. And I did not get any sense where you've addressed that. It's going to be up to us to address the enforcements of any negative things that occur out there. And I am still concerned very much about that and how it impacts the neighbors. So I am not crystal clear that we could tonight go forward and do anything, and you still have a meeting you want to have and so forth. So I just think that there's some more things you could do to make us a little bit more comfortable, if that's what we want to call it. But there has been some engineering people that have looked at this, and the staff has looked at it, and we've all massaged it from the last time to this time, and I just would like to see some more things done before we can move forward. I don't really have any other questions that you could answer probably, because what I want is probably not financially feasible. So I'm gonna let that go and move on to Mr. Ziegler.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to address anything? Go
I could
ahead.
potentially address,
Okay.
real quick. I don't think we proposed a condition that would allow the permit to carry on in perpetuity. I didn't see that, so.
I think if it transferred to a public utility. Yeah, that's when it said in perpetuity.
Oh. So we
I'm sorry.
have transferred permits to Dominion on other projects, and
With that condition
to my
statement?
knowledge, we've never had a condition like that. So
Okay.
if it's in there, which apologies, but made it in there
Okay.
that way, that would probably be an oversight, and we would certainly change that. There should be an end to the permit.
Okay, what about hurrying up to phase it and not worry about the fact that we only want 50 acres at a time?
So I'll let Brent go into more
Okay.
detail, but I would just say that assumes that 50 acres is absolutely the only way we can accomplish safe land disturbance on the site, and doesn't take into account any erosion and sediment control regulations that are in place now.
Yeah, I think the way the policy read, that where I referred to the length of time is because it specifically said permanent stabilized site in 50 acres, right? Which means you have to hit a perfect growing cycle. It has to.
Okay.
You apply your erosion protection, and then that has to take up to an acceptable level. And I think it even went as far as like 100% coverage of permanent, right? That's what extends the time. Typically speaking, we would go in, and there, it is phased, right? And so a site this size, you could have 2 civil contractors working at opposite ends of the site.
Right.
And you would have pockets opened up, probably, we have to come in and establish the perimeter controls first, right?
Right.
So only disturbances for construction entrances, diversion ditches, silt fence, sediment basins, right? Once those are installed and stabilized, then we can move upland of those, and only upland of what drains to those areas. So in that manner, we're working within those parameters, and those are well-established erosion control procedures, right? Those are the rules today for anyone, anywhere in the state. So we would go about it in that mechanism, and once we've graded an area, we stabilize it, right? And the goal is to get as many areas stabilized before we start mechanical installation, which is the post-driving.
Well, stabilization is a short window. It's what, is it 10 days or something, 21?
7.
7 days, okay, so you have a short window to stabilize anyway.
That's right. And so we've got provisions in other projects. King and Queen County's got some pretty specifics where we're tracking progress, and we can only have so many acres open at a time. It's somewhere on like 300 or 400 acres, but it specifically addresses temporary stabilization with the goal to be permanent stabilization. The sooner this thing is permanently stabilized,
Sure.
the better off we all
Correct,
are.
right.
It is a key focus of ours, always, always. So I think the reason the 50 acres was specifically around the provision of permanent stabilization, and then everyone blesses it and says you can move on to the next 50. That's,
Okay, so you would have an alternative maybe to that,
We
but you
could do
could
that.
still phase the 50 acres at a time, because it seems to give us more heartburn when you want to just, I mean, be a timber company and clear cut the stumps too, you know?
sure, that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm done, thank
Okay.
you.
Yes, Ray?
I'm going to start kind of one over the world here. I appreciate you made efforts here to reduce the impacts in several different areas, but my question is, how did that happen? We took a third of the acres of the solar panels away, but the power output's the same. How does that happen?
So technology is one thing, so it's always improving. You can get better technology. One of the height questions particularly was you can go more dense with your site. So that height restriction is more for a 2-in-portrait tracker versus a single in-portrait tracker, which is a larger structure, but it allows for more power density. Generally speaking, when we're doing entitlements, not knowing exactly, depending on availability of modules, and what power class they are, we're generally zoning an area that's larger than the ultimate footprint, right? And so basically, we just tightened our belt on what was available acreage to us and what is the available technology that we project. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, no. I
I'll
work
try
with solar
again.
panels in space systems, and I understand technology improves,
Sure.
but there's not a 50% increase in solar panel efficiency, year to year. So there are small increases as you go along. So I find it hard to believe that you could get an increase like that out of technology.
Yeah, mostly it's to make sure that we have available acreage. Like, for instance, as you move through the diligence process with cultural, historical, threatened and endangered, wetlands and streams, as you move through the development of the project, there are specific topographic areas that are unconstructable. You lose areas of the site. So we're trying to make sure that we have ample areas to properly build the facility.
Okay, I don't understand, but I'll move on. You reduced the construction time. You said it went from over 3 years to 18 to 24 months. So you cut that almost in half. So how does that happen? Does that mean we've increased the number of truck traffic? We doubled the truck traffic through there? Because now we've increased the construction time or decreased it by half. How did that happen?
Yeah, the prior plan was a three-phase approach, and I want to say that was in an attempt to sort of pack the 300-acre limit.
The microphone, you all get a
Excuse
little
me.
closer to that microphone
Yeah,
so everybody can.
So the prior plan, I believe, cut the project into 3 construction phases in a potential attempt to kind of hack the 300-acre limit and say, oh, we'll build 300, and then we'll build another 300, and then we'll build another 300. So it was a protracted construction duration. We've built projects of this size, and so the 18 to 24 month is more representative of the time it would take to build a site like this if you didn't sort of chop it up into 3 pieces.
But does it impact the construction traffic and the number of tractor trailers that you come through in 18 months? Is that going to be the same as it would have been for over 3 years?
You should be delivering the same amount of equipment. So I'm not sure what they proposed in terms of construction traffic previously, but you would have theoretically a similar amount of construction traffic over 3 years, but now in 2.
2 years, okay.
Yeah, I won't disagree with you there.
Okay. The other question I had, another question, is you talked about using the Raccoon Ford Road as the primary construction entrance. Is there a difference between primary and only?
It should be the word only.
Okay.
Yep, that's a typo.
Okay, let's see. Do we know any more about the substation in terms of the size, the height, anything like that? We've talked about the panels being 18 feet high. How big do we expect the substation to be?
Really, the tallest structures are, the backbone structures to tie into the grid. And actually, the lightning protection poles, the masts are probably the tallest. And I'd say they're in the order of 50 feet, 60 feet, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Right beneath the transmission line. So they'll extend up, connect.
Okay. One of looking at comparing the policy versus your recommendation and so forth, one of the things that was different that I noticed was the construction times. The policy says 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 p.m. You say 7 a.m. Why do you need to violate a policy for 1 hour?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead. And I'll say that it's not in an attempt to violate the policy. Certainly if we're bound and required by permit condition, we will comply with the permit if it's 8. We're simply proposing an earlier time if the planning commission and board are amenable to that, simply to get more man hours out of the day.
Okay.
It's mainly based on summer condition, sun up, going to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would like to see it say 6 p.m. or sunset, whichever's earlier.
Sure.
But I've tried that. Let's see. the, we talked, in a couple of places, it talked about, in the policy, it talks about different bonds that are going to be required for landscaping bonds, decommissioning bonds, liability insurance. Those were all covered. I saw that in your plan. It also talked about erosion sediment control, stormwater management, and construction and performance bonds. Are they, did I just not see that in there, or?
Those are standard bonds for every project.
Okay, okay. Okay, and, okay, I think that covers it. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Most of my fellow commissioners covered a lot of my thoughts and concerns, but I wanted to focus back on what Commissioner Kilby was talking about, is the stormwater runoff. I'm just concerned, once this is built and the runoff from those panels and not treating them as impervious area. DEQ put that out for a reason. And I think it's because there are some issues with some other sites to the south, I believe in Spotsy maybe, where they had just horrific flooding, erosion conditions and runoff that was uncontrolled. Yeah, I was hoping to see that this was going to comply with that and treat all the panels as impervious area. But would that be something you'd be willing to do, or would that not make the project feasible?
No, it's doable, for sure. I think,
I mean, we had one, the one we're talking about in the county, I think that's about 1,000 acres, and the panels were, 700, 800 acres, and they had, 60, 70 facilities, and that's with the old regulations. So I'm thinking, wow, if, this is almost 700 acres of impervious area. I was expecting to see maybe a schematic with like 100 stormwater management ponds on it.
so you wouldn't necessarily need more, you just need them to do different things.
Right, or larger, but I mean, the volume, the required volume for that's still going to be the same.
Yeah, and it's not 700 acres of impervious. Keep in mind, that is,
Or the
that
panels.
number's that's the array, but the panels don't cover that whole, there's open spaces between them, and that acreage is included in that.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So what is the area of the panels, do
So
you know?
roughly, and that depends on the density of which you place them. Generally speaking, in Virginia, we're at a 50% ground coverage ratio, so 50% of the actual array footprint.
So like 300 acres?
Yeah, 350, something like that.
I mean, if that's a parking lot, that's a ton of water. That's a lot of runoff.
Well, yeah, the thing to keep in mind is that you do still have ground cover under it. So
Right.
it is a bit of a hybrid situation. I would suggest that a lot of this is based on experience and talking to DEQ. A lot of the problems and what led to that regulation, that regulation, they regulate post-construction stormwater runoff, right? The problems they were having was construction runoff, where you didn't have grass established to help slow that down. So the calling them impervious, it's a different situation as to what they're actually solving for, right? So,
But I mean, they still felt the need to do that
yeah,
and put that out.
there's some other bits to that process, but
Right.
it's probably not the appropriate place to speak about that.
What about the effect of, gutter downspout, runoff from the panels into the ground, the trenching
So
effect?
the drip line?
Drip line.
So drip line's a bigger issue for a fixed tilt system that doesn't move. So this one's constantly moving. So it's not in a fixed position to drain at a specific place all the time, right? In a fixed tilt system, you could have those, and those are all soil dependent. I would suggest here, this is a clay soil, very cohesive. You don't really have as much concern with that drip edge on a soil type like this. You have other concerns, but not that particular.
I know a lot of these are site plan questions, but I mean, that's, aside from the other issues during construction, my concern is once it's done, just erosion, runoff, stormwater management.
Sure, absolutely. It's ours as well. We live it, eat it, breathe it. I mean, we have thousands of open acres in the state of Virginia right now that we're responsible for, and we don't take that lightly.
Right, I mean, and this is close, to some streams and tributaries that's it's going right into. So, all righty, thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I found one question. And maybe I misread something here, but I went back and I looked at your last proposal, and the decommissioning cost in the last proposal, I thought was $35 million. It's now 9. Why the huge discrepancy?
It was, when I was looking back, I thought this was ridiculous also, but they actually fat-fingered some of the material counts, so they're grossly overestimated by a ridiculous order of magnitude. So when it was like, there was an original and then a mistake, and then we've asked them to prepare a new one for this application, and it's still on the order of 9-10 million.
Okay.
Now, there's plenty to be said about decommissioning bonds because there are not a lot of solar projects in the United States or even in the world potentially that have been decommissioned because it's still pretty emerging. So the best way that localities have found to have conditions around those bonds is to reevaluate the cost every 5 years or whatever. I think in this case it's 3. And so ideally in say 10 years, 15 years, when those projects start to get decommissioned, we've got some data. And so now all of a sudden you've got a stepwise change or you need to, it's the same. So we'll find out more about that in the future. But as long as we're continuing to reevaluate, hopefully that's the best way to kind of understand something that is very forward-looking.
Okay, but the 35 was an error, is basically what I'm hearing you say, and the 9 million is inaccurate.
It was the consultant's error in their spreadsheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one other point I could say is for those executed projects, most of them have posted decommissioning bonds. We could provide you the data from other counties that shows what was agreed upon and what bond was posted. We certainly could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just have,
I had one more thing. I was just gonna, and Doug was talking about, if it ends up being like 300 acres, if you're looking at like a 10-minute time of concentration with about 300 acres, you're probably looking at about 1,500 CFS for the 10-year storm. But if you're looking at 100-year, you're probably looking at like 2,500 CFS, something like that. Just depends on how, if you're looking at 300 acres of impervious area at 0.9 using a rational formula, but just depends on time of concentration. You're probably going to lengthen it, but as you get into it, you could end up having, if you end up not having more facilities that would require maintenance, then you end up increasing the dam height, increasing the storage, increasing the risk, with dam failure, also with, or dam breach also with making it a state-maintained facility, and DEQ will probably.
And I would say on this site, due to the topographic situation, dam height is not an option. We can't go taller because then I couldn't get it in.
They probably just will have more
So
facilities.
it's just, they're just wider, bigger footprint, different control structures.
Understood.
okay.
One final question, if I could. If any of us wanted to visit one of your larger sites here in Virginia that might be comparable to this, would we be able to do that, set up a tour?
Yeah, we've done it. Obviously, we don't own and operate the facility, so we just need to get that permission, but we have done that, yes.
Okay, so we could contact you, could facilitate a trip into one. Okay, thanks.
We'd be happy to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recess before the public hearing.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank
Second.
you very much.
Thank you.
We have a motion second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're now in recess for. Second. All in favor, aye? Back in session. Thank the applicant for the presentation and addressing the questions that we presented. So at this time now, we will open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Those of you who may have, you are here for the first time, we ask that you will raise your hand, be recognized by the chair. You will come forward, give your full name for the record, direct all of your conversation to the commissioners and not to the applicant or anyone else. We also will give you 3 minutes, and we'll time it, so at the end of 3 minutes, I'll be real nice about it. And we just ask you to do that so that others who would like to speak will have the opportunity to speak. So, all right, raise your hand or stand up. Okay. I'm sorry, we'll take you first, your name and all.
Larry Green, Salem District. First, as a longtime resident of the county, first time I've had the opportunity to come before the board. I want to congratulate you on a more diverse knowledge and people. I'm very proud of you. And I want to compliment you on that.
Thank you, sir.
Now, tell you a little something about myself. Cindy knows about me, but my expertise is in logistics. I was the owner of Spirit Woods Transport. In 2004, up till a month ago, I retired. I was also a Virginia State certified dynamite blaster for road construction pipelines for William Hazel. I did a little research on this and see if we want to get close to time. I made a phone call to the Roseville VDOT, talked to Tim Horton. He's not aware of this. This is his area. He's not aware of this project. He has no knowledge of it whatsoever. Right now, there's a 2,000-acre solar project going on in Spotsylvania County. The traffic has been routed down Route 621 through Orange and Spotsylvania County. The road, this road is destroyed. Large runoff problems. VDOT's left to repair it. Now here's the kicker. As we all know, state and local authorities share secondary road construction. Orange County and Spotsylvania County are now fighting over who's going to pay the bill because it's come down to them. Now, my short time working for William Hazel, we would go into jobs like this. Before we put the first piece of equipment down, that road was brought up to standards to be able to handle the low boys coming in. The average low boy loaded with a uke, which they're going to need, or large excavator, is going to weigh 100,000 pounds. You will say goodbye to that road. That blackjack will not hold up to it. We all know that. The ground coverage that Katie talked about, blackjack does not hold nutrients. If you ask any of the farmers how much money they spend on fertilizer every year, even chicken litter, it won't hold chicken litter. So somebody's going to have to come in and strip a whole lot of topsoil off and put good topsoil back. There's no way that I figure, unless somebody really cuts some corners, this project can be feasible. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman in the middle. And then
I know, that was good.
Good evening. Can you hear me, Chair?
yes, I can.
My name is William Fauché, and with my family, we own Greenville Farm in Stevensburg, near the southeast corner of the project. It's my pleasure to address you and the commissioners this evening, and I thank you for listening. This is the third time Maroon Solar has applied, most recently unanimously rejected by the Board of Supervisors. The current solar policy limits, as we know, projects to 300 acres. The application is in violation of the policy. But from a farm family, I'd maybe bring some sort of perspective to flooding. This is, we're just south of Algonquin Trail, between there and the Rapidan River. It's a wet area, highly productive soils. In an average wet year, we get corn into the ground in the middle of May, which is all right. If we are dealing with an enormous amount of impervious panel coverage, vast amount of tree clearing, and as we know, the subsoil is going to remain impervious blackjack. Runoff's going to be substantial. It's going to, in just an average wet year, mean that those soils, we won't get into them until June. Every week that you lose from the optimum planting date is less yield at the end of it. If we're getting corn in the ground in June, the impact of that calls into question the economics of farming corn there at all. Furthermore, the truly bad years, you're going to see enormous sediment runoff. You're going to see vast amounts of erosion, permanently jeopardize productive agricultural land. The Dominion Bleacher Project in Louisa is a cautionary tale for us all. It's exactly what's happened. I thank you for listening and ask that you reject the application. I thank you all.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bill Madden. I've been a resident in the Stephenburg district all my life. Furthermore, my family history has been a resident in the Stephenburg district for about 209 years. I like to say that my property is located so far back that you have to pipe in sunlight. In any case, I welcome a project like this on my property if it turns out to be where you're looking for another alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Blake Cox. I'm one of the founders of a nonprofit called Energy Right. So I founded Energy Right to educate around energy being developed the right way on the local level with a focus on property rights and conservative ideals, including an all-of-the-above approach to energy. We want to ensure there's a common sense voice on the local level when we are having these energy conversations. And so as you all consider solar projects in the county, we would just encourage you to keep an eye on property rights. So meaning that someone has the right to do with what they want with their land as long as they aren't negatively affecting their neighbor or their community. But to also be mindful of the economic growth opportunities that come along with clean energy investments. So we believe that solar projects should pay their fair share in taxes to the county so that all residents can benefit. Siting agreements are also a useful tool to offset the county expenses or allow leaders to lower taxes on residents. It's also important to remember that additional tax revenues from solar projects do not strain public services like other types of development may demand. These tax dollars can help the county lower taxes on citizens, go to repairing roads, infrastructure, or our first responders. And so not only can these projects be a boost to your local tax base, but also be a huge benefit for local businesses, from your local landscaping company to a local hardware store or even a food truck. They all stand to gain from the construction and the long-term operation of these projects. So passing a smart and responsible solar project doesn't just mean one person is benefiting, from county government to citizens to local businesses, they all stand to see from solar being done the right way. So I would just encourage you to move forward in the consideration of solar in the county, and Energy Right, if we can ever be a resource, we'd be happy to do so. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Give your name, please, miss.
Hi, Laura Rogers, Stevensburg District. Over the last 5 to 6 years, a lot has changed when solar first came to Culpeper. It started with small local solar companies applying for 20 megawatt facilities on 300 acres. That has drastically changed. Now we see up to 150 megawatt utility scale solar applications that encompass thousands of acres with massive quantities of stormwater ponds. This type of development is not what Culpeper anticipated with this. And how come you only seem to hear from Stevensburg citizens and not the rest of the county? Well, the main reason is Stevensburg has a big target on its back due to the cheap, flat land and the layout of transmission lines for data centers and these solar facilities. Therefore, we have a lot more at stake than the citizens, say, in Fairfax or Catalpa. So how would the average Culpeper citizen get information about potential use changes in their neighborhood? Well, they go to board docs online. So that's what I did. Well, I already knew. But the application is consistent with 28 attachments totaling 493 pages. Plus, there were 5 additional attachments with the county, and that was another 74 more pages to read. 567 pages in 2 weeks is a lot for anyone to read. I sure don't do that anymore. And I've got to trust that the planning and zoning staff, the commission, and reviewing agencies will be diligent in their review as they decipher these submitted applications, expecting they'll apply their knowledge of the current utility scale solar policy ordinances, state statutes, and that they trust that they will make the appropriate recommendation. However, trust is a two-way street. You also have to trust us. We have been on this utility scale journey with you along the way since the beginning too. We have become just as knowledgeable as you about megawatts, substations, solar panels, stormwater management, geotechnical reports. Listen to the citizens. We are a great resource. We are well educated and knowledgeable in solar speak. We are not a bunch of NIMBYs. We have done the work and have come before you month after month with thoughtful insight to the problems of utility scale solar in Culpeper. Before you know it, 88% of our agricultural land that we proudly celebrate as one of Culpeper's greatest natural resources will begin disappearing if this continues to expand. Once land is gone, it's gone forever. You will not recover the farmland after 20 to 30 years of panels displacing soils, nutrients, wildlife pathways, and destroying waterways and ponds downstream. We have said time after time that utility scale solar in these areas are not compliant with solar policy and with the future land use in our comp plan. Staff recommended denial of this application in their report. You must deny this maroon solar application, 7-0, and others like this. Utility scale solar is not for Culpeper. Stop industrializing our farmland. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rogers, do want to say, as the chairman, that we do appreciate all that the citizens, especially Stephenburg, has done along this journey to where we are right now, and we have become more educated also because of that. So, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. The gentleman.
Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman, and board, thanks for listening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to address that it was my understanding that the electricity from these, I'm Fred Reed. Fred Reed, yes. But it was my understanding that the electricity from these facilities would be going to Amazon, to big data centers and whatnot. I guess if this was to happen, I'd be waiting for my $15 off in my utility bill if they built this solar facility. Just saying. This is not part of the comprehensive plan. That's been well talked about already. The runoff, mainly there. I live within a mile of the entrance here. The runoff there majorly runs to Summer Duck Run. There's tributaries and whatnot. That winds up going to the Rapidan, and it's all part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So you need to take that into account with DEQ. Then the fact that Dominion might end up owning this. Dominion's got all kinds of Possum Point with their ash stuff that's still just sitting there. Nothing's ever really been done. You know, different people from DEQ have gotten tickets to the Masters tournament, whatnot. The other big concern of mine living this close is the traffic that's going to be created from all this. There's about 4 houses, I'd say within a square mile of that entrance, mine probably being the furthest away. If you talk about blasting and the traffic, it's going to be a whole different world. The other thing to think about too is culverts on that road. Under the conditions we have right now, one of the culverts closer to 522 at the end of Raccoon Ford Road developed first of all, it was sunk in. It was a hole. That hole was there. You were lucky if you got to know it, because if you didn't, you're going to lose part of the front end of your car. Then the state put cones up. I'd say the whole process took about 3 weeks to put in a new culvert at that point. I have big culverts for a creek that runs, it's on Raccoon Ford Road that runs, time running out, that runs across the road there. I see it sinking now. I don't know if it's the actual culverts that are going or if it's in between the culverts. But my thought there is that those big trucks and stuff, that stuff's just not going to last, and you can't depend on VDOT to fix it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Ralston, and I live in Stevensburg. I'm unfortunately very disappointed to be here again tonight to respond to a solar application that's already been defeated twice, the last time unanimously. At that board meeting, Bill Chase, the sitting supervisor at the time, put forward the motion to deny because he heard from so many residents in Stevensburg, and he listened. Now, here we are again, with essentially the same footprint, and nothing has changed here in Culpeper with regard to the solar policy, except we have a hearing on the solar ordinance coming soon, and it doesn't make sense to be approving an application when that ordinance is pending. The staff analysis of this project concurs that it does not comply with the current comp plan nor the solar policy, and we are in the middle of discussions about the new comp plan. It's pretty disgusting to me that this developer hasn't taken the hint after being defeated twice and is trying it once again to get approval for a site that covers more than 1,800 acres of timberland and almost 700 acres of panel, way more than twice the acreage limit of 300 acres as designated by the policy. You know, the discussion about the impervious surfaces is a huge concern. We all know what happens to the soil in this neighborhood when we get too much water, which is the case right now. My horse fields are a muddy mess, still from the holiday rains. Maroon's site contains wetlands and waterways that feed into the Rapidan River and are also part of the same watershed as Greenwood Solar. These two projects are very close to each other. Water would come off of these two sites and flood the farms south of them. I forwarded photos today from the devastation of 4 other solar facilities into rivers that are miles away from the solar plants, polluting them, and which have resulted in an EPA settlement of $1.3 million to resolve Clean Waterway Act violations. The devastation from sediment, erosion, and storm water runoff in other Virginia counties is well documented, and I've sent that in the past, along with other photos of flooding specifically in this neighborhood. We can't take any chances with our waterways and rivers. Our position on solar has never changed. We're not against solar. This is a power plant that should be properly sited in an industrial area, not on farmland, not on timberland. Now, Stevensburg has been disproportionately borne the brunt of recent development threats from other solar plants and data centers. 93% of those surveyed on the comp plan have asked the county to slow down its rate of growth and development. Take the hint. Listen to the residents. Keep Culpeper rural and beautiful, and deny this application. Thank you.
My name is Josiah Wilkes. I'm a farmer in Culpeper. I don't know why we would want to put a big metal solar panel across Culpeper's beautiful land. Maybe it's because of the money a few people would make. I think solar panels would be really good on top of office buildings and hospitals, and even on top of people's houses. Could we keep our farmland for the cows, the crops, and the woods? The farmers need to grow the food and the lumber that we all need. We don't have to be like other counties in Virginia that want the money from data centers and solar fields. There are better ways to use our land and make the money our country needs. Could we please invest in my generation's future by keeping Culpeper a wonderful and pretty place to live and to farm? Please vote no to this big solar plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Wilkes, Stevensburg District. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
I'm concerned with this application on a number of fronts. First, as it has been mentioned by several people already, the Maroon Solar application has already been denied on a previous application by the Board of Supervisors. Furthermore, the solar policy in place recommends that utility scale solar be limited to 300 acres, and this application goes way beyond the limit. Culpeper is a beautiful county that has been deemed one of the best places to live in Virginia, and we want it to stay that way. Industrial scale solar belongs on industrial zone land, not agricultural land. In fact, it was even mentioned by a commissioner earlier this evening regarding allowing an ordinance for chickens on the R1 zone property, that it defeats the purpose of zoning by doing that. In like manner, industrial scale solar on non-industrial zone land does defeat the purpose of zoning. Sure, special use permits are understandable for a winery or maybe a wedding venue, not industrial scale project. Then who benefits from this proposed application? The community doesn't. A few select landowners will pocket money, that's sure. A little money will go to the county. Businesses outside Culpeper and outside the state of Virginia would gain much from the industrial power site. But industrial scale solar dangles all the money that they'll bring to landowners in the county. But this is still a very new phenomenon hitting Virginia that has many future unknowns, and even potential disastrous environmental issues and the wasting of land. Our county doesn't need to be part of such an experimental concept as industrial scale solar. I say let's give it another 20 or 30 years. I don't think we would regret it. There are other ways to make money. And farmland then would be lost and the community negatively impacted, to include the loss of value of property in an area no one knew would ever be considered for industrial power site due to the A1 zoning of this whole area. People moved to A1 land for A1 purposes. Industrial scale solar or data centers should only be allowed industrial zoned property. Allowing industrial scale solar and A1 land defeats the purpose of zoning and sets a dangerous precedent of spot zoning. Landowners should have the right to do what they want with their property, But then we have zoning ordinances to not only guide, but also protect the community. I request the Planning Commission vote to deny this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Take your time. Yes. We won't start the clock until you get up here.
If the time goes as slowly as I do, it will work out.
Oh, hey, that's a blessing.
I am Michael Baldwin. I own Summer Duck Farm on Algonquin Trail in the Stevensburg district. I think I have the longest single boundary with this property that you're talking about. I got about a mile of boundary line. I was surprised when they said they were going to be, they've been good neighbors and they've reached out. I've never heard from these people, although I've got a mile of frontage with them. It seems to me that the thing that motivates this application is profit motive. And the thing that dictates their strategy or tactic is kind of arrogance. We don't care what the county says. We don't care what the policy is. We don't care what the Planning Commission has said. We don't care what the Board of Supervisors has said on more than one occasion. If I can paraphrase Cicero, how long are we going to allow these people to abuse our patience and our lifestyle? I got two, you know, all these other issues you've heard of. I want to talk about the wetlands. My farm is directly south. I know there's wetlands in there. I count about 6 year-round streams that go through that property, and there's quite a number of seasonal streams, the ditches and so on that flow through there. They're blessed with beaver dams in there. There's substantial wetlands. Now, they're talking about blasting the diabase to put in these ponds, and that's to hold runoff. I think the plan is to use the ponds to drain the wetlands. And of course, all that stuff drains through the Summer Duck Run and the Potato Run and the Cedar Run down into the Rappahannock River. And I also got frontage on the Summer Duck Run and the river of about 3/4 of a mile. So I've got some pretty passionate feelings about protecting that stuff. I'm glad that recently the focus of some conservation organizations has moved from the lower Rappahannock to the upper Rappahannock. So the Friends of the Rappahannock, the Piedmont Environmental Council, the Friends of the Chesapeake Bay are all moving up this way as kind of an unpaid commercial. The Friends of Rappahannock have opened an office in Culpeper.
Okay. 3 minutes.
They'd like to have contributions and volunteers. The other thing I'm gravely concerned about, a few years ago.
It's 3 minutes. You already have.
Can I
3
take
minutes.
one more?
Just come to a close as soon as.
Well,
please.
you know, this was the area that was the beginning of the Gettysburg campaign began here. In my front yard, there was a slaughter. Dozens of people were killed there. And one time, one of my neighbors came and said he was so pleased he had been relic hunting and he found a breastplate. And beneath the breastplate were brass buttons. And beneath that was a buckle. I said, seems to me you've robbed a grave, because that's how some of these soldiers were interred at the end of these battles.
Okay.
At the end of the conflict, the president said, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. And all I'm saying is, where the campaign began, we cannot dedicate, we can only denigrate. We cannot consecrate, we can only desecrate. We cannot hallow, we can only defile. I ask you again, for the 5th time, please deny this application.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take your time. Anyone else? Oh, the gentleman in the back here.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Katowski. I live in West Fairfax District of Culpeper. My family has been in Culpeper for 7 generations. We've heard lots of reasons why this project should be denied. I also urge you to reject the application. And I just want to quote something that one of the commissioners said earlier, which is, this is why we have zoning. This is why we have zoning. And zoning is about putting the right use in the right place. This project is the wrong use in this place. A year ago, if this council had said to the public, we plan to create the most intense industrialized area in Culpeper in Stevensburg and put there all the heaviest industrial uses that will come for us this year, what do you think the public reaction would have been? But that is exactly what has happened, because we have had piecemeal, willy-nilly, haphazard approval of industrial size projects in Stevensburg, the data center, the solar, now other solar projects. I urge you to reject this application, preserve what we can of Stevensburg, and let's retain our Culpeper character. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes.
Right. Good evening. I am Sarah Parmalee with the Piedmont Environmental Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. PEC is an advocate of solar energy, especially distributed solar and rooftop solar. It is our belief that solar power will be a component of achieving a carbon-neutral electrical grid. However, this utility must not come at the expense of existing natural resources, local communities, and infrastructure. We are deeply concerned that the Maroon Solar Project in its current form will have a profound and lasting negative impact on the Stevensburg area. A significant portion of this proposal does include working forest land. These forests may not be the redwoods of California, but they provide many important ecosystem services to the locality, including intercepting and filtering rainwater, sequestering carbon, providing wildlife habitat, and stabilizing soils. Even though much of the site has been clear-cut, the roots of the trees, as well as the native seed bank, remain, and vegetation will regenerate if given the opportunity. Many of these ecosystem services will be reduced or eliminated if the site is cleared, graded, and fenced. And, as has been previously mentioned, the impact on the local watershed will be compounded by the same processes of clearing, grading, and fencing that will occur on the nearby solar project, Greenwood Solar. We are also very concerned about the erosion-prone shrink swell soils that cover a significant portion of the proposed site. Timber harvests on and near the site, which disturb a relatively small portion of the soil and root mat compared to the grading and clearing included in this proposal, are known to have been delayed for months at a time due to problems with erosion and difficulty operating equipment in the deep clay mud. As has also been mentioned, it is very possible that Maroon and Greenwood could be under construction at the same time, which would exponentially increase the impact on local traffic and roads, as well as the previously mentioned natural resources. This project will have a profound and very possibly permanent impact on the Stevensburg area, and given these concerns, we strongly encourage the Planning Commission to deny this proposal.
Thank you. Yes, Daisy. She needs something to stand on? Is it there? It must already be there.
Good evening.
Okay.
This is Deezy Campbell, Stevensburg District. Today I got an email from the Farm Bureau. The Virginia Agriculture and Forestry contribute $105 billion to Virginia's economy in 2021 and provides nearly 500,000 jobs. Please deny this application. Even staff cannot recommend support of this project. It doesn't fit our comp plan. It doesn't abide by the 17-1 rules. And moreover, there are still too many unanswered questions and valid concerns of the local neighborhood public, including wild and domestic animals, probably prolonged build-out due to weather issues, potential supply issues, disrupting traffic flow, numerous heavy equipment, and numerous trucks degrading country and wooded roads. This extraordinary proposed site and scale are above and beyond the county's 300-acre maximum requirements for a utility scale project. It's time for Maroon to quit Culpeper County. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Troy Ralston. I'm a resident in the Stevensburg District. And I appreciate the opportunity to once again, I think for a third time, speak to the Planning Commission regarding Maroon Solar's proposed industrial-scale solar power plant on historic agricultural land. As I've said in the past, I support solar power, but it needs to be done responsibly. In fact, I have solar powering one of the barns on my farm. That's responsible solar. Solar on rooftops is responsible solar. Building us covered parking in our parking lots and all the big box stores on Route 29 with solar on top of those carports would be responsible solar. Or putting a power plant on land that's already zoned industrial next to other businesses that are also industrial would be responsible solar. But a solar power plant on historic agricultural land is not responsible for too many reasons to talk about in 3 minutes. Many of those reasons have already been addressed by other citizens, and I'm sure the other citizens that still haven't spoke will cover more. At the March 2021 PC meeting, when Maroon's second application was being considered, I asked the Commission to deny Maroon's application and to let them know that in this game, it's 2 strikes and you're out. Don't give them a third strike. Well, even though the PC unanimously denied that second application, here we are giving them a third strike. Actually, it's really a 4th strike. Strike 3 was when the Board of Supervisors unanimously denied them at their May 2021 meeting. So what's really changed since the unanimous strike 3? Nothing really. Maroon still proposes a large, almost 1,900 acre project, about 200 acres larger than their past proposals. The Board of Supervisors is still discussing a solar ordinance, which, as a reminder, at the PC's last meeting on this in October of 2021, you recommended to the board that these projects be on land that's already zoned industrial. And the county's policy is to still limit these projects to 300 acres or less. But here we are again, spending time on another Maroon application. In 2020 and in 2021, you voted unanimously to deny Maroon's first and second applications. There were many reasons you voted for denial, but as I recall, the main reason you voted no is because the projects were too large. One of you even asked Maroon if they would be willing to do a smaller project, and their answer was no, because it was not economically feasible to do small projects. Well, too bad. That's still our policy, 300 acres or less. So I asked the Commission to again unanimously deny Maroon's application for a fourth time. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Corey Clinton, Stevensburg District, and I also second that. In my humble opinion, I believe right in front of us right now, there's enough information for y'all to unanimously deny this, just strictly based upon the size and the scope of this. You know, it's well beyond, you know, the 300 acres. It's I understand the timing of this application. We're dealing with the 2019 policy and the 2015 comp plan, but, you know, lessons learned and exhaustive meetings and time we spent investing into revising the comp plan to be approved in the future. I think but that's also should be a consideration, thinking of this into the future. When we think about it of a futuristic thing, and this is no offense to any engineers, because there's a lot of unknowns, I believe Culpeper's not prepared for such a large-scale endeavor. You can engineer this thing to death, but there's unknowns. And a perfect example of that is other large-scale solar plants that have happened where now DEQ is having to go back and make revisions because we learn stuff, right? Well, lessons learned, an engineer can engineer this thing to death, but in my opinion, there's nobody better than an adjoining farm owner who is intimate with the land, with the soil. He knows the soil no better than anybody around. And an engineer can try to do any chemical research and drilling and all this kind of stuff, but you're still not going to come to the same conclusion. Somebody who adjoins it, he knows the runoffs, he knows where the historical part of this, the community knows this information. So please take that into consideration of twofold. One, the future plan to be adopted, a future solar plan, and then one, the intimate knowledge that our community has in Stevensburg District. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Brother Chairman, and to the council. My name is Willie David Crenshaw, Jr. I'm also a pastor in this area. For the last 17 years, we are part of this project here on Mount Pony Road. We're landowners. I've heard all of the comments and things of that sort, and I understand that. But I stand, for my parents who are elderly, who we're taking care of. My mother can't speak. She can't talk. My dad has to take care of her. And they're the primary landowners of this land. We've tried to sell it. We've tried to do other things on it, and it's just not feasible for us as a family. So when this solar project came along, we looked at it and said, what's the best part and what can we do in order to make good use of the land, but not disturbing the neighbors and things of that sort. So I believe that the company has done a wonderful job in making sure that they're taking into account just the land. I understand everyone around it, but we're the people that own the land that this is going to sit on. So take that into account as you vote, that we're satisfied as what they're doing, what they're continuing to do to work with us and the county and the surrounding area to make sure that, everyone is, you're not going to satisfy everybody. We're human beings. It's just not possible. So we just ask you to support this project because we support this project. And I'll end with this. I work a lot with farmers on the food resiliency program, so I understand where they're coming from. I understand what's going on. But as the last gentleman said, work with the landowners, but also consider the landowners that own the land that they're working with right now and the things that we would have to do if this project doesn't go forward.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Wilkes?
Good evening. Mark Wilkes with the Brandy Station. And I want to thank you again. You mentioned one of your responsibilities was to listen to the public, and I have found that you do that quite well. And I do really appreciate that. I'm a real estate agent, and one of the many reasons that I found that people move to the Culpeper area is because of its strength of a rural agricultural community that has historically promoted and encouraged a suitable environment for family life while conserving and protecting from urbanization prime agricultural and forestal lands because of their valued natural and ecological resources. And I don't believe that has changed. I believe the majority of Culpeper citizens would oppose this solar plant if they knew what was really happening. So why are we even considering this again and going through this all? It provides little or no benefit for Culpeper outside of a promise of money. And I know money was, the amount of money to be given was raised and increased with this last application. But I have been, as a real estate agent, have watched this happen again and again in Fairfax County, Prince William County, and Loudoun County, where outside companies come into a county, inexpensive land, makes all sorts of promises which seem really good on paper up front, and yet they don't ever really materialize in the future to come. In fact, the citizens of the county end up being left with the expense of failed promises. Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William had the highest tax rate in all of Virginia now, and yet they were in the same situation we were back 50 years ago when all these promises were made to them. Something like this damages and harms the community. It makes money for a few people. And I'm not opposed. I'm a landowner too. I like to make money off my land, but not at the expense of my community or my neighbors. And then those who make their money do not have to live with the consequences of what they did. Their neighbors will. And in the years to come, the county will have to live with these things again and again. While the company who actually brings in this and makes all their money, they're gone. Now we have to, 15, 20 years ago, when decommissioning comes in, when the problems come in, when the problem with the land comes in, we have to deal with that as a county ourselves. The decommissioning of these sites is proving to be quite a nightmare for the communities that are having to deal with it. It's very expensive to them. And a bond money is really just a promise. It's not a guarantee that the money will be available. And we've seen that happen a number of times in the past 20 years where money has not been available when needed. The only reason industrial scale solar is viable is not because it's economically viable, but it's because it's been underwritten by our government. It's being subsidized. Without that subsidy, we wouldn't even be here tonight. And I stand against the destroying of our county with industrial solar. I stand against helping a few people make money at the expense of the community. And I stand against creating an environment which companies like this one feel like they have a chance to get their project approved. And your time is valuable, and I do appreciate all you've put into this over the years, but please deny this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay.
Good evening. Once again, Don H., Stevensburg District. In my opinion, the applicant admitted here tonight that their last application was riddled with mistakes and/or this current application is riddled with mistakes, but yet they call themselves experts. Experts answer questions, but they surely didn't answer many questions tonight. They acted as though they could not answer the difficult questions. I want to thank the Planning Commission members for their countless hours spent analyzing this worthless application that should have never been accepted in the first place. You have much more important county business to be focused on, and it disturbs the Culpeper County residents that your valuable time is wasted with this application. I didn't even take the time to put a suit on tonight because I didn't want to waste much more of my time preparing for this speech. This project was already rejected twice for too many reasons that I can list tonight. The residents before me, Culpeper staff, you Planning Commission members, have already exposed many violations and infractions. You can put lipsticks on a pig, but yet it's still a stinky pig. This application stinks. They want you to buy a pig in a poke. You can plainly see that by the questions they cannot answer tonight. I simply don't have and won't waste much more of your time going through the mounds of violations, errors, miscalculations in this application. If this application was approved, it will destroy the agricultural landscape of Raccoon Ford and surrounding properties for generations. 2 weeks ago, I was a personal witness to Summerduck Run breaching its banks and flooding many, many fields. Summerduck Run water raised more than 10 feet, and it only rained for 12 hours that week. A first-year engineering student can easily see the numerous violations and oversights. I'm sure none of you would approve this application besides your valuable homes or that of your grandparents. These solar sites were pitched to the county in the beginning as small projects averaging 25 acres or less to, quote, help supplement the family farmer's income, end quote. This is definitely not that. It is an industrial power plant. Most of the acres belonging to the residents are not family farms or farms at all, and some of them don't even live in Culpeper County. This is a big scam propped up by federal tax dollars, yours and mine. We are all fine with 25-acre solar projects to help the family farmland, but not large-scale industrial power plants to destroy our county and waste our federal tax dollars. In the past, you planning commission members have listened to us and used common sense and sound judgment. We ask again that you use your wisdom and listen to the Culpeper County residents and deny this application. This application reminds me of a kid that asked his mom to have candy prior to dinner, once rejected, then asked his dad, twice rejected, and again asked his grandmother, 3 times rejected. The third time is not a charm, and the third time is an assault of the Planning Commission members' intelligence. Please be an adult in the room once again and reject this application so we can all go home and have our dinner with our families. There is nothing more to see. There is nothing more to do. There is nothing more for me to say but to deny this application tonight. Listen to the residents, listen to staff, most importantly, listen to your own common sense. The definition of insanity is the person that does the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Well, you Planning Commission members aren't insane, and they will and they will deliver the same results, which is to deny this application tonight. I want to thank the Planning Commission members in advance for unanimously denying this application tonight. Thank you for being consistent and following the rules and regulations of Culpeper County. Thank you for following the comprehensive plan and its revisions. Thank you for the input to the solar policy and ordinance. And thank you for being leaders. And most importantly, thank you for listening to the residents of Culpeper County. In closing,
Okay.
I'm no longer going to
Thank
waste
you,
your
sir. Thank you, sir.
I'm no longer going to waste your time, so therefore I'm going to home right now. Have a safe trip.
Oh, no, you got to stay now. You got to stay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Just so it would be fair to everybody. So- huh? Oh, okay. No one else? We now declare the public hearing closed. As always, we thank you all for your comments, and as always, we take those seriously, and they have a major impact on our decisions as we compare this and make the decision whether it fits into the guidelines that we have before us. So, all of you complied. We, we say 3 minutes. You complied, and we appreciate that. So, the little guy that spoke, Lil Wilkes, we thank you for taking your time out and being here with us this evening. So, but yeah, this has been the 4th time or 3rd time that we have seen this. So, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move that case U-2235-22-1 is not in compliance with Code Section 15.2-223, as the general location or approximate location, character, and extent thereof is substantially not in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or part thereof.
Second.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Price?
I have one.
Go ahead, Lance.
I have one thing. We also have to also rule on Article 17 as well, as part of it.
A second.
So 2 motions.
2, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the question
So
I've
the-
got about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So is that included in your motion?
No, it's the second one.
Got to be two separate ones. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the question I've got is, if the Greenwood project was deemed consistent with the comp plan, and it must have been because it's been approved, then how could this one not be? Because they're similar in scale, they're close to each other. And I'm not saying this one is, I'm just saying, how do we say yes to the one big one and then no to
We
this one?
didn't. The supervisors did. We did not. The supervisors did. We denied Greenwood, and it went to the supervisors, and they approved it. So we did deny it, and it did the same non-compliance with comprehensive plan. They don't have to give a reason to deny, so they didn't. They just said, we approve, or a reason to approve. I'm sorry, the supervisors do not have to give a reason.
I understand what you are discussing, or what your concern is too. And when they look the same and all, but again, it comes to us making a decision majority-wise whether we feel it fits into the guidelines, the ordinances that, or the zoning that we have there. So, you were getting ready to say something.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just want to ask Sam a question. In the comprehensive plan, does it refer to the 300 acres?
Not currently, no.
Not currently?
Not currently.
In the future?
In the current draft, it does, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? And I just, I've shared this before, that when it comes to these votes and that we have, whenever we are fighting for our rights and our land rights, we're fighting against someone else's land rights. And we've heard both sides here tonight, and it was good to hear from one of the landowners to actually to come up and to say something. And when I look at this particular application too, and we had situations where it was historical land or battlefields and things like that, and this particular project is not as exposed to those things. And we talk about farmland, and of course we want to preserve as much of that as we possibly can. And when I've been out to visit this property and all, and I can see the property owners who have it, is, what else are they going to do with it? And over the years, I don't understand how all that works, but at the same time, when an opportunity comes, as a landowner just stressed, they've tried to do other things with this piece of property that they have, and they can't do anything, with it because of the kind of soil and the things that we have. So with this project and like with everyone, when it comes to the land rights, and no, I don't want to see solar plants all over the place either, and that's my problem with the 300, is that we just have a lot of small ones. Somebody just abusing the system, and you have a lot of small ones all over the place. But as far as this goes here, I hate to just vote it down without any real, well, Article 17, I think, is the part that I'm more concerned about here. But it's good to be able to share exactly, give some idea to the landowners, especially when they came out tonight, as to why we feel that it doesn't fit. But anyway, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? No other discussion?
Can I ask for just clarification? So, Katie, could you read the motion again? I mean, specifically, how is this not consistent with the comp plan?
My motion is that it is denied as it is not in compliance with 15.2-2232 as the general location or approximate location, character, and extent thereof is substantially not in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or part thereof.
It does not preserve farmland, it's making it industrialized. And that's our comprehensive plan from 2015, very specifically promotes the agricultural community and the agricultural business.
But that's
Yeah, I
what the
think another-
conditional use,
Yeah, that's why you want a conditional use.
yeah.
I think another issue is, as you pointed out, the extent. I think
The
that's
size.
a big concern this year.
The extent, what do you mean?
The size.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So, before we vote, just one other thing I want to clarify as we close this out. Sam, to the staff, in this question, to the staff. When it comes to that property they here, it could be done in 300-acre segments, right? Just split it up, and you got 300 here, and 300 here, and 300 here to get exactly what they're asking for tonight.
They certainly.
It could be done that way.
They could.
Because that's what we have before us, that's what it says, that's in compliance, right?
Well,
That's what
it would be up to the board to determine whether that's in compliance with the
Yes.
policy, but someone could propose to do that, and they have proposed that in the past, but that's not what you're looking at
Right,
tonight.
right,
so,
right,
yeah.
right. Okay, all right.
But right now, we don't have anything in our ordinances that requires a certain separation between, say, one solar development or another, or
That's
one
correct.
kind of development and another of the same sort.
That's correct, yes.
That's right, that's right.
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other discussion?
Call for the question.
All your horses.
Is it possible for me to offer up an idea?
Mr. Chairman,
No, we
there's a
have,
motion on the floor.
we have a motion on the floor and now, so we have to go through that process and we see where it goes from here. Okay. Okay. All in favor, raise your right hand of the motion. Okay. All opposed? All right. Okay. We will,
Mr. Chairman,
oh, and then we got Article 17, okay. So that motion fails. We go to,
No, the motion passes.
oh, excuse me. Well, it failed in a way.
You didn't
Okay.
vote?
No, I voted.
You did? Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, it's unanimous.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Nope, sorry, you gotta do your gavel first there.
Right. Okay, so that motion passed. We will send that forward to the board with a recommendation of denial, okay?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I move that case U-2235-22-1 be denied, as outlined in Article 17 of conditional uses, as it does show significant impacts that will adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use, which is stated in Article 17-1-1.1. Also does show significant potential impacts, as stated in 17-1-1.2, to be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, question to staff. Sam, in the staff's analysis, you laid out some pretty significant issues with the proposal. Was all those issues and concerns that staff had all communicated to the applicant well in advance of this meeting, so they would have had a chance to address those before coming tonight, and then they chose to be here anyway?
Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner Price, I would not define that as well in advance. Our process does take some time for review, as our code allows. The applicant submitted it, I believe, back in the end of October. The agencies have been reviewing it. Our third-party consultant have reviewed it. I can't tell you how long it's been since they've had those full comments, but it has not been a great deal of time. Just today, the applicant did submit a response to those comments that they've received, and I believe it's even dated as of today or last night maybe. But they did provide responses to those comments. Whether that would sway your decision or not, I don't know. But those comments, they've had a chance to respond to them, at least at this point. Whether the planning commission wants to take more time to consider it, that's certainly up to you, but you got a motion before you, so.
Yes. And as we move forward that to, Sam, just that when we, in a situation like this and as big as the situation is, and we say that we deny and we use Article 17, we don't have to have any specifics, right? Just that it doesn't comply with that in some way?
You can always have specifics.
No, but it's not required.
I'm not an attorney.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just sharing. In the past, it's helpful to have specifics. Commissioner Reams certainly cited specific code sections.
Yeah.
And you all have expanded upon some of those concerns in your discussion.
Mr.
But if you
Chairman.
wanted to highlight some of those specific concerns, you certainly could do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to amend my motion by stating that the significant impacts include but are not limited to traffic management, stormwater management, and erosion and sediment issues.
Okay. Who's seconded?
He did.
Second.
Okay, all right, you agree, okay. Now, any other discussion? Being none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay. We'll have to forward that, or we will forward that to the board to, with the recommendation of denying, okay? All right, now, we made it. Any other, have anything else for us, staff?
We do, actually. We need
Okay.
to convene and go into a work session.
Harrison, does Harrison have something for us? I'm sure he
No.
does. Do we need to move into a work session?
Yes.
Okay. Chair, entertain a motion to move into a work session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye? Aye. Okay.